anyway.
How about the Rachel Reeves ride, says Terry in Birmingham. You go round and round and vanish up your own deficit. It's the HS2 ride. It travels at high speed for 10 feet, where everyone gets off and into the replacement bus ride. Tickets are £50 if bought 5 months in advance, or £1,000 on the day.
There's a strong rumour going around that Rachel Reeves is going to have a kissing booth at this theme park. So what I do, mate, I shove a £5 in a pot and you can go in and fill your boots.
Thank you very much indeed. Very generous of you. One from G, who says fast-track entry to every ride for illegals, plus a free night stay in the park's hotel and free food. New theme park bumper cars will have to pay a congestion charge, and the funhouse isn't built yet, despite Angela Rayner's pledge to build houses. And what about Ghost Train doesn't move because the driver's on strike? Have a good day. This is brilliant for the theme park. How about grow your own cannabis farm? Yeah, that's a good one. An Ethiopian safari park, narrated by Angela Rayner, says Gary in Durham. How about that? This sums up the Labour Party to me. The one idea they have to improve growth for the economy is to basically have a bloody big fun fair. It's the type of idea primary school children would pitch, given 10 minutes to come up with something. Well, it turns out, Matt, in Royston, that it's not even their idea. But they're now trying to claim it's their idea, even though it was actually the Tories.
They have done brilliantly on breakfast, but you know on Drive you've done brilliantly as well. Downhill slide rides surrounded by ULEZ cameras so that people are fined on exit. Love it. You could have a Birmingham-themed Whack the Rat stall. If you whack the rat, you can have your bin emptied for free. On the Labour theme park, a house of mirrors where they're all boarded up because they can't bear to look themselves in the eye.
I've got a great one for you, mate.
This is for the is this for the Universal theme park run by Labour?
Moat right around the park.
Yeah.
With loads of dinghies. Call it a channel and say anyone who can break in, all is free.
Imagine the Scouts to say you can break into a theme park for free.
Hi, Jeremy. Hey, it's simple. You've got the Labour Ghost Train.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome to Morning Glory. It is 3 minutes past 6, ladies and gentlemen. The sun is up. The sky is relatively blue. I'm not sure how well it's going to do for the rest of the day because there's rain coming, apparently. I'm only giving you that as a sort of a top-of-the-hour weather check because, of course, the weather is very important because not only do you look forward to what the weather report is going to be every day, but Yvette Cooper watches it every single morning just in case she wants to know how many migrants are going to come across the channel. Because according to Yvette Cooper, whenever she sees the sunshine, she goes, oh my God, there's going to be another 1,000 migrants coming over the channel. And she's praying for the rain. In fact, I'm hearing from our sources inside of the Home Office that Yvette Cooper is actually going to be doing a rain dance a little bit later on today in the hopes that by Thursday and possibly Friday, it'll be so rough in the channel that nobody will come over at all. Because, quite frankly, that's what we're up against. You know, we've been told to prepare for nuclear war. We've been told to start, stockpiling all sorts of medical equipment and medical stuff just in case Vladimir Putin decides to throw a nuclear bomb our way. But meanwhile, we can't stop the migrants coming in boats because it's too nice out there. It's too sunny. It's too pleasant. It's too lovely. There's a small sort of little wind coming from the east. And it's blowing them all the way over here. So, you know, quite frankly, the Home Office have completely blown it. They're going to be announcing this morning they've arrested some people for migrant smuggling. But once again, it's a bit of a drop in the ocean, if you'll pardon the expression. Big stories this morning to talk about. Apparently on the front page of the Daily Mail, there is evidence that the Rwanda plan was actually working. There were fewer migrants coming when the Rwanda plan was up and running, even though none of them had actually been sent there yet. But there were fewer of them coming because they feared being sent to that country in Africa. The Guardian's got Rachel Reeves spending 15 billion quid on some new buses for somewhere outside of London. She's going to be spending local transportation funds just to placate members of the Labour government and members of the Labour backbenchers because they're not happy with the fact that she's not spending enough money. Meanwhile, police cuts mean crime will be ignored, is what it says on the front page of the Times. I'm sorry, I thought crime was already being ignored by the police because they haven't simply got any interest in arresting people unless you've written some horrible tweets. Charlie Rowley's here with us. He is, of course, a former Downing Street advisor. Charlie, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
morning.
The ramifications continue to rumble on from the defence review, the strategic defence review. It turns out that Keir Starmer might as well not have bothered, because after arguing about whether he was going to put 2.5% of GDP in or 3% of GDP in, NATO have come in with their great big hobnail boots and a great big machine gun and gone, actually, you're going to give us 3.5% and possibly more. Meanwhile, the White House have said the BBC are pro-Hamas. I mean, it doesn't stop. I can't tell you whether we've got enough time to get all these stories in. 0344 499 1000. Also, Labour are about to destroy 5,000 natural habitats with their plan to build a load of houses for people. I cannot tell you how many times I have thought about why Keir Starmer ever became Prime Minister over the past 24 hours. But we'll get to that. We'll hear from you as well, of course. 0344 499 1000. Send us some voice notes. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Well, I don't know. Charlie, very good morning to you. Every time I see you, the government is in a worse place than it was last time. Here's the front page of the I paper, right? UK to stockpile military medical supplies for nuclear attacks. The NHS needs to think about mass casualties and what war means, says General Sir Richard Barrons, former commander of the Joint Force Command. Why are they doing all this? Why are they trying to terrify everybody into the idea that there's going to be some kind of, nuclear holocaust coming from Vladimir Putin?
Well, exactly. I don't think the government can get anything right at the minute.
No.
And it seems to me that they've thought that defence might be the story.
Yes.
That, the public can get behind the government, that they can think, oh, goodness me, the
but
government...
I'm afraid that didn't work.
It didn't work, and it seems to have gone hopelessly wrong.
Yeah.
As you say, with now NATO saying that on the back of a big announcement by Number 10 to say we're going to spend up to 2.5% on GDP when economic conditions allow.
Yes.
Still can't put a date on it. It's still an ambition.
Yeah.
We still don't know where the money's going to come from or how we're going to pay for it. All the while, but we can have up to 12 new submarines, and we can have all these 6 factories going, and we can now have all of this medical gear to prevent, as you say, a nuclear attack.
There was an amazing interview with John Healey yesterday. I'm not going to say where because I don't wish to give away any rivals' information, but it was very good. And he was asked about how many submarines, up to 12 submarines, was. And he couldn't answer, because we've already apparently got 6, and we could have 7 or possibly 8. It could be 9, maybe 10. Nobody knows. And then he was asked how much do they cost each of these things, and he didn't know that either.
No.
So they've ordered a load of submarines, number unknown. They're going to pay for them with money which they don't have, but even though they don't know how much they cost.
Exactly, and not even an estimate, not even a starting ballpark figure to negotiate.
How are these people in charge of anything?
Well, exactly, and that'll raise all kinds of questions as to who is actually in charge, who's making these negotiations. What on earth are they doing? Is the UK taxpayer getting bang for its buck?
Well, exactly.
Obviously
right.
not.
And clearly, Starmer must have known there was going to be this this NATO summit coming up in the next couple of weeks, right? So he must have surely known that there might have been a chance that at that NATO summit, NATO would say, well, we think this is what all European countries should do, as per what Donald Trump recommended, spend a minimum of 3.5%. So why go through all this rigmarole of like 2.5, 3, maybe, possibly in the future, time immemorial, only to be slapped down by NATO anyway?
Exactly. Look, it's not that hard. We're either under a significant threat or we're not.
Right.
If we are, you pay for it. And the cost.
My bet is we're not.
Exactly. I think that's right.
And yesterday, the reaction from the audience, both watching it and listening to this show, they're just not buying it.
No.
They're going, because if it is really that much of a threat, why are you spending all this money on diversity, equity and inclusion? Why are we not farming our own food? Why are we not, why are you trying to stop that? Why are we not drilling for our own oil and gas instead of buying it from Norway or somewhere else or Qatar?
Exactly.
None of that's happening.
No, and I think it's an attempt at what's been dubbed the dead cat strategy.
Yes.
Where things are going hopelessly wrong.
Even that's not working.
You throw a dead cat on the table just to hope for some sort of distraction.
Yeah.
And at a time where we're seeing thousands of people making those small boat crossings, where actually we can't seem to defend our waters.
No.
The idea that the government's going down the path of saying defence is our number one priority, and people are taking you for fools. Or they're taking the public for fools. If you can't stop a few dinghies,
they haven't even
got
guns, these guys, right?
Then how on earth can you trust these guys?
I don't know whether this sort of sums things up for me, right? In the pages of the Daily Mail today, pages 8 and 9. There's a picture. I can't see what's actually happening, but Rachel Reeves, for some bizarre reason, has been photographed testing an army drone right? She's standing next to John Healey, who's on the right, looking more and more like Leonard Rossiter from Rising Damp. And a guy on the left who's got some camouflage gear on, and he's camouflaged his face as well.
I think he was trying to hide from her.
Apparently it's a suicide drone she's operating. We've checked it out. We haven't, unfortunately, got any video footage of her crashing the drone into something. But she's standing there for all the world like... I don't want to say the word housewife, but she just looks like she's a housewife who's sort of fallen into Salisbury Plain and gone, what's this then? I'll pick it up. Oh, it's a suicide drone. I seem to have blown up the building that had the army camp in it. The other great story in here is that Keir Starmer has personally chosen the new chief of the RAF, Air Chief Marshal Sir Richard Knighton. And so apparently he's coming in to replace Sir Tony Radakin, who's retiring after a glittering career. Air Chief Marshal Sir Richard Knighton, head of the new RAF, can't fly a plane.
No.
Now, I know that some people will say it's not that important, but I think actually it is quite important. He's the Royal Air Force. That means, you know, basically the most important thing that they do is they fly in planes and they drop bombs on people and shoot people out of the sky. He can't fly a plane. He's an engineer. Doesn't that strike you as a bit of an odd choice?
I think it would do to most people. I mean, so he can't fly a plane, but he can fix them.
Yes.
But that might not be much help if you know you're thousands of miles away. And,
not really.
Not.
Also, if you're deciding on sort of strategy and you know what Air Force pilots should be doing, wouldn't it be better if you could actually fly one?
And I think if you're going to take, I think you're absolutely right. I think if you're going to take orders and direction from your senior military personnel, you've got to have full confidence in the fact that they would be able to do exactly what they're asking of you.
Right.
So if they're going to ask you to fly over battlefields or to go into action, whether it's against, you know, for Ukraine or whether it's in any other conflict that arises, you want the people that are giving you the order to have been in that position themselves, to give you that confidence.
I think so. Yeah, absolutely right. And now moving on to trade. There's so much to talk about this morning. Front page of the Times. British steel manufacturers have warned ministers of highly damaging delay to Sir Keir Starmer's trade deal with the US, despite last night being spared President Trump's new 50% import tariffs. Last night, Donald Trump basically said he's putting 50% tariffs on all steel coming into America, right? He hasn't exempted Britain from it, despite the fact that he's put a sort of pause on it in order for things to be sort of sorted out and have time for it all to settle down. But basically, Keir Starmer, back in May, said this. Let's have a look.
Remove tariffs on British steel and aluminium, reducing them to zero.
Yeah, except they haven't reduced them to zero. So like everything else, and we had Andrew Griffiths on yesterday, the Shadow Trade Minister, who's written a letter actually to the government and to his opposite number in trade to say, can you please clarify exactly what the situation is, because you told us there was a trade deal done with the United States of America. It now turns out there was no trade deal done. It was a kind of exploratory conversation which might lead to something.
Exactly. And now it seems that the US have only given the UK 5 weeks or a short period of time to actually get the detail of that deal that they announced last month, totally signed, sealed and delivered.
So there is no deal.
So there's no deal. There's no deal. And to put it politely, the US have got us over a barrel.
Yeah.
Because if we don't sign up to what they're obviously asking for, and there's some conversations about steel and aluminium and just some of those exports, then of course they're going to say, all right, well, you've not upheld your end of the bargain, UK. We are going to slap that 50% tariff. And what kind of message is that going to be for the Prime Minister? Another headache.
But it's just more lies, because that's the other, you know, narrative that's coming out of Downing Street at the moment, is people are now accusing him of lies. I mean, Chris Philp yesterday accused Keir Starmer flat out as Prime Minister of lying and being dishonest in a tweet about stopping the small boats and sending more people back to where they came from, which turns out not to be true. I'm sure we can find it, because our team here with Christian are brilliant at doing this, but I'm sure there was a tweet put out just last week in which they said, we have done, you know, these incredible trade deals with 3 of the biggest trading groups in the world, the United States, the European Union and India, right? Now, it turns out at least one of those deals with the United States is not a deal. So why would they put out a video saying this is what we've done?
Exactly, and it's becoming a systemic problem, because it's whether it's on trade deals and the economy to try and say that they've got a deal when they clearly haven't, whether it's about saying they're stopping the boats and the numbers are coming down, whether those numbers are actually backdated, maybe that they've inherited from a previous government, or whether it's about NHS waiting times, whether it's about investment in public, whatever it is, it doesn't add up, and they're clearly clutching at straws. There's somebody clearly running around Downing Street saying, right, right, well, you know, we've got a whole bucket of bad news this morning, so let's find something to try
but the trouble is, it's all backfiring because nothing that they say actually rings true, and people are now getting wise to it. And people are going, we don't believe a word they say, which is why yesterday when I was asking the audience whether or not they bought this idea that we're kind of somehow, you know, under the threat of a daily attack from Vladimir Putin, they don't believe it. No. They just go, well, it's just another excuse to put more taxes on us.
Exactly.
Right?
And by the way, you know, we don't believe you, we don't trust you, because I think from the very first day that Labour came into office, they failed to understand that actually it was an election that they kind of got lucky at. They got into office.
They didn't win. The other lot lost.
Totally. People wanted to absolutely kick out and give the Tories a thumping, and rightly so because of the mistakes that were made in the past. But Labour came in on this sort of arrogant sort of way of thinking, oh, we've got this huge majority, people really love us, we're going to change Britain in the way. And they have totally misread the public from day one. Right. And ever since then, trying to tell us how bad the economy was, then trying to tell us, oh, actually, we need to talk up the economy. You know, no.
Almost as though they weren't actually ready for government.
Well, but you know. Exactly. But
they said they were.
5 years as leader of the opposition, you would have thought, you know, he should have been ready. You know, Yvette Cooper, you know, not as a junior cabinet minister. She was in the last Labour government. She was chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee. She's been shadow Home Secretary for about 3 or 4 years, maybe even 5 years.
He's a very successful TV host now. Oh, sorry, he's probably going to lose his job soon, but that's another story. Never mind. Not to worry.
But you would have thought she would have been ready. She would have come into office
fully costed.
Fully costed, would know the answers, would know. She's had enough time to work on the brief, and yet we're still seeing record numbers of people come into the country.
Exactly right. And I don't want to put too much pressure on the production team here, but there's another one that we used to play an awful lot before the election, when he was in, I think it was a few days before the election, where he was asked about, you know, government, and he said, we are ready to hit the ground running. You know, every department, every single plan that we've got has been fully costed. And he goes on and on and on about how every single department is prepared for government. And they clearly were not prepared for anything.
No,
absolutely shocking performance.
Exactly, and I think, you know, that's why Keir Starmer's ratings are totally rock bottom, and I think he's had the worst start from any Prime Minister.
I had a conversation with somebody yesterday who said they think that the new sort of local elections that were put off last year, which will come in to play this May, if they are as disastrous as the last lot, he's gone.
I wouldn't.
That's the beginning of the end. That's the first time somebody that I know who's in the political world has actually said that.
Yeah,
you know.
And I think people can believe it. I think people can see that, because if there's no strategy, if there's no base to what the government actually wants to do, it's just going from one crisis to another and making it worse.
They're sort of flailing around like a man in a padded cell when somebody keeps firing a hose on him. You know, something like that.
I think people are. I mean, we've all said the criticism of Keir Starmer. You know, he's clearly got some sort of intelligence. You know, he must be. You know, you can't. You can't. Maybe
I don't
not.
know. He comes across as a very stupid individual.
Well, it's becoming questionable. But I think all the people
and a liar.
And everybody, I think, from the day one has said that this man doesn't know what he's doing in politics. He's not a politician. He's not political. So he's not connecting with the public. He doesn't know what the issues are, the bread and butter issues that people care about when they wake up every day, and he doesn't know how to fix them. He is just managing. I think a bloated civil service, people that are happy to manage decline, where he will try and just trot off to Europe every now and again because he likes the European summit.
To look a bit like a statesman.
And look like a statesman, to act in the role of Prime Minister without actually knowing what he's doing, what the problems are, and going about the right way to fix them.
It's almost as if they've got no grid. I mean, we'll ask you about that in a minute, but here we found, of course, the brilliant team here have found the "We Are Prepared for Government" speech from last year. Here we go.
We've prepared this party for government. We have prepared all of our departments for government. If we are privileged to come in to serve our country, it will be public service for me, as it always has been, not self-entitlement.
Yeah, that was before the Lord Alley scandal, which everybody's so long ago everybody's forgotten. Public service. It will be about service, not about self-aggrandisement or self-entitlement. And then it turned out that he was getting all of his glasses for free from Lord Alley. He was getting all of his suits for free from Lord Alley. His missus was getting dresses. Rachel Reeves was getting free trips to New York. No, sorry, that was Angela Rayner. Rachel Reeves was getting, you know, free something
concert tickets.
Free concert tickets. You know, the whole freebie mess that happened after they got in. And we should have known straight away that meant that every single thing that they said about being ready was complete and utter cobblers, balderdash.
Yes, I think that's right. I mean, people can have, and I know people have quite a fairly low opinion of lawyers who like to make a bit of money out of the people that need a lawyer. But I think he's treating us like it's a court case.
Yeah.
You know, everything that, he'll go out to sort of
Well, he wouldn't
plead
win
to
many
the
court
public.
cases being like this.
No, well, I don't think so, exactly. It was certainly not the court of public opinion, because that's totally turned against him. But I think he just goes out to try and spin us a case against the defence.
Yeah.
Or, as if we're blind by the evidence.
Right, as if we're jurors who can't actually tell the wheat from the chaff.
Exactly, yes.
Or whatever it is. It's 6:20. Charlie Rowley's here. Starmer tweeted, I think, last week, this is just one. The trade deal with India will raise living standards, put more money in the pockets of British working people. He keeps saying that.
Yep.
We're going to put more money in people's pockets. Well, no, people aren't finding more money in their pockets. Their pockets are empty because they've had to pay more for their council tax, more for every single bill that they're paying for. The cost of living is going through the roof. They are not living high on the hog. And even the rich people of this country that he's gone after for tax have all left.
Yep.
So, what on earth is he doing? Coming up, we're going to tell you about the police, because on the front page of the Times, they're saying that they haven't got any more money, so they're going to have to just ignore crime. I mean, it just gets worse, doesn't it? It's only Wednesday. This is Talk.
There was some local resentment about this.
There was a bit of local resentment. I mean, everybody there hoped that she would be found alive and well, but I actually had been to Pride prior to Maddie going missing on holiday.
Right.
And when I went there then, it was this bustling, incredibly touristy, full of English families with young children. When I went back, understandably, it was just after this little girl had gone missing, but it was peak holiday time, the beaches were deserted, the restaurants were empty.
Wow.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham, 6:24. The sun is shining, and it's doing rather well this morning, actually, I have to say. Don't forget, if you miss any part of this show, there's a podcast that goes out every single day, every single weekday, right after the show, around about 10:15. It's very efficient. It's a very efficient system. Got this from Margaret in Birmingham. Morning, Mike and Charlie. She says, Yvette Cooper in her rain dance. I'm singing in the rain just singing in the rain, no more migrants crossing again, joined by Ed Miliband, who's singing Blowing in the Wind. What a joke these people are. They really are. And Michael from Birchington in Kent says, the new head of the RAF is not a pilot. So what? Starmer's head of the UK and he can't run a country. What could possibly go wrong? I mean, it is extraordinary, isn't it, how quickly... I mean, they haven't been in a year yet.
No.
You know,
No.
Can you imagine what the year anniversary is going to look like when we reach July the 4th?
Well, it would be another, which, is that Independence Day?
It is Independence Day.
I think lots
in
of
the
people,
United States of America.
Yes, I think lots of people will be hoping for a bit of independence from this government.
Yeah,
I think,
absolutely.
But you're right, you can imagine that they will just push out another video of how challenging it's been, but all the successes and things are going in the right direction.
Yeah.
And people will just think to themselves, you know, what on earth have you been...
Right.
You've been on some of the Mayor of London's...
the old wacky-backy.
Plantations.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly. Well, have a look. Here's one that they put out yesterday, number 10's video on the small boats. This went out yesterday.
Know how we're controlling our borders? Then watch this. We're working with our international allies to smash people smuggling gangs for good. We're giving law enforcement new powers to criminalise those who endanger their lives at sea, making sure every business carries out right-to-work checks, ending the exploitation of illegal labour. Our plan is working. Since July, we have returned nearly 30,000 people with no right to be here. Hundreds of boats and engines have been seized, and illegal working rates are up by 40%.
Yeah, and the next thing he said was, can I have a soy latte, please? And you find this guy in a coffee shop. Well, who is he? You know, our plan is working. No, it isn't. No. You can't just keep saying things and expecting people to believe them. Our plan is working. We are making the changes. You know, we're putting more money in the pockets of working people. You're not doing it. I mean, every single tweet that he puts out, and I say this every day, looks more and more ridiculous. It looks like a demented individual who's in a padded cell, sending out things going, I'm absolutely fine. I'm perfectly fine. Yes. You know, nothing wrong with me at all.
Nothing to see.
Why are you in a straitjacket? Well, it's for my own good. You know, it's just bizarre.
It is, and that video, I think, in particular, will come back to haunt the government, because I don't think the numbers that they're talking about, the 30,000 that they've deported, are not.
Well, that's entirely wrong. I mean, Chris Philp has already pointed out that there's only 2,000 of those from small boats, and about 20,000 of them are voluntary repatriations, people who actually wanted to go back.
Yes, yes.
And were probably paid to go back.
And people, exactly, and people that might have overstayed the visa, students and all the rest of it. So they are people that have voluntarily and quite easily been removed.
And 24,000 out of the 30,000 they're claiming all went back in one fell swoop back in November.
Yes.
So since November, which is 6 months ago, they've only moved 6,000 people.
Yes, exactly, which is not
which is 1,000 a month.
Exactly.
We had 1,000 come in on Saturday.
Exactly, yep.
I mean, you know.
Exactly so. And that's why people won't trust this government when they try and claim one thing, and yet the reality is something
the numbers,
totally
as
different.
They say, do not lie. Here's Yvette Cooper talking about digital IDs at the Home Affairs Select Committee.
What we are particularly looking at is how we have digital ID for everyone coming to the UK. Through whatever visa, through whatever system that they arrive in the UK, that we have digital ID in those circumstances. We've set this out in the white paper in terms of what our next steps are on this. So we want, for example, to have a digital service linked to e-visas and linked to our border management process to be able to determine whether an individual is in or out of the UK, whether they have left at the point at which their visa expires, or whether they are overstaying and immigration enforcement action is needed. We also want to ensure the e-visas can effectively be used as a way of having that digital ID around the ability to work, to be here lawfully and to have the ability to work.
Wasn't that a song by Phil Collins? E-visa lover. What's she talking about? The border management process. What is that? Border management process. In you come. What's your name? Mohammed. OK, off you go. Fancy a free hotel? Yeah, on you go. You want a sandwich? No, I can't eat that. Sorry, it's not, it's not halal. Give us a pizza. All right. Well, that's the border management process.
Well, exactly. I mean, taking a step back, just listening to that interview or that Select Committee appearance saying, we've been looking at this.
Yeah.
And she published a white paper.
Yes.
And
the Borders Bill going through Parliament.
And you think, you've had, however many years to get ready for this. This should have been enacted on day one.
Also, you think the Home Office is just starting from scratch.
Yes.
They've been doing this for years.
Exactly.
Right? What on earth is she talking about digital ID for people who we don't know who they are? How are you going to give digital ID to a bloke who's got no passport?
Exactly, but the people aren't showing up.
What's your name? Mickey Mouse?
Yes.
OK, here you go, here's your digital ID.
Exactly, and I hate to break to the Home Secretary, people aren't showing up at the e-gates or the borders with
the
e-gates.
The e-gates would be great. That was another lie, wasn't it? Crikey, so many of them.
Exactly. These people, they're showing up in small boats. They're just walking, as pictures, if people can see the pictures, just walking onto the beaches. These are not people that are being policed or patrolled. There is no border. That is the point.
And there's no visa system for these people. They're not being given visas. They're being given free hotel rooms.
Yep.
And then they're disappearing off if they want to, so be it. Go and work for one of the delivery companies somewhere, or go and work for a drug organisation, or go and work for a crime organisation. Which brings us on to the police on the front page of the Times today. Britain's most senior police chiefs have directly warned Sir Keir Starmer that they will face stark choices about which crimes they investigate if the Treasury pushes ahead with cuts. Once again, Starmer said he was going to bring more police officers in. I think it was 12,000, wasn't it? Which they've said, no, we can't do that, can't afford it. He was going to expand the battle against knife crime. He was going to half knife crime. He was going to half crimes against women and girls. All of that can't be done, according to the police, because they haven't got the money. So basically, Sir Mark Rowley is now saying they've written to the Prime Minister warning that cuts will have far-reaching consequences, and apparently negotiations between the Home Office and the Treasury are going poorly. So as you said, there's constant pressure now on Rachel Reeves and the Treasury and the Department of sort of the Exchequer to come up with money, and they haven't got any money.
Definitely, and that's absolutely right. And look, this is part of the spending review where the Chancellor has to set out basically what the government departments are going to cut back on, because she needs to make spending reductions through departments. Otherwise, it's going to be tax rises yet again, which nobody wants, and that's something that she said she wasn't going to do. So she's going to have to give somewhere. But the idea that even within Whitehall, the system is totally broken. The Home Secretary clearly can't negotiate with the Treasury because she's now got all these police chiefs, including the National Crime Agency, amongst others, writing to the Prime Minister directly to say, look, if we don't get the settlement that we want, we can't do the jobs that you're asking us to do, which is to halve crime and tackle all of those issues such as violence against women and girls. And so on your head be it when we can't get the results that you want because you've cut our funding. And we can't, because the Home Office can't negotiate.
To be honest, as well, it's all a bit of a political game. Mark Rowley knows what he's doing because he's preparing the ground, isn't he? They call it rolling the pitch for when it all goes horribly wrong and the figures come in that say, the police are only solving 6% of crimes. He'll say, well, that's because the government haven't given us the money they promised.
Exactly, and released a load of prisoners out early who shouldn't have been released out. And when there is actually somebody and people that are maybe taking up prison spaces, Lucy Connolly, who shouldn't be in prison anymore, when they're going to be letting out violent criminals who actually the police will have to go and round up again.
I've completely forgotten about that. I mean, that's going to happen any day now, isn't it? They're going to release about 5,000 dangerous prisoners back onto the streets. Hurrah! Absolutely brilliant. Let's get a voice note from Chris.
Good morning, Mike. Chris in Northants here. Enjoying the show? I don't know why you're surprised that old two-tier Keir appointed a new leader of the RAF who can't fly. I mean, he appointed a Chancellor who can't add up. I mean, at the end of the day, he's wandering around in his Lord Alley bought rose-tinted glasses thinking he's putting money in the pocket of working people.
That's brilliant. It's true. He's got a Chancellor of the Exchequer who can't add up. Which is a bit of a problem. So now he's got the chief of the RAF who can't fly. I wonder what...
Well, she can't be chosen on a CV for one.
No, well, that's the other thing. She can lie. Starmer's being totally dishonest with the beleaguered public by announcing preparations for world war, but completely ignoring the real and present danger of civil unrest caused by himself, says Mick in Wallington. I mean, there is that risk, isn't there? I mean, there are people who tell me that there are certain parts of this country which are very, very tense, very much like a tinderbox. If there's any kind of, terrible event that happens and it's dealt with badly by the authorities and by Starmer, which you can't honestly say wouldn't be the case. We are literally, fed up to the back teeth of this government, and people will be very angry.
Totally. And, we've only got to look at Southport as the prime example where, awful riots that took place, on the back of information that should have been released earlier that wasn't, and where the Prime Minister then said, well, that was to do with the far right.
Yeah,
it was not
far right thuggery,
exactly,
which has been since disproved.
Exactly, and so when you've got a Prime Minister, not dealing with it properly, clearly mismanaged and miscalculated and misunderstood the situation.
Yeah.
Mainly because maybe there was somebody from the left wing, Looney Brigade in Number 10 saying, "Oh, this is a far right Prime Minister. Actually, you will win over the nation by calling it out for what it is." Actually, mainstream Britain is fed up with the lack of integration, the numbers of people that come into this country.
Right.
Of course, that might not have necessarily been the case with Axel Radicana in Southport, but it sent a message that clearly there are too many tensions in our society, and if it's not dealt with properly, and if the government doesn't listen to ordinary hard-working people that are fed up with the numbers of people coming in, the lack of unfairness, the two-tier care system that Chris, in your last voice note, was absolutely right to say, then there's going to be problems.
There are going to be problems, and those are going to be
and the police can't deal with it.
And the police can't deal with it. They haven't got any money.
They haven't got any money.
Too many arresting people for tweeting. Page 4 of the Telegraph today, white Britain's in the minority in 40 years. This is a Matt Goodwin study that's been done. White British people will become a minority of the population within the next 40 years, according to this report. A study of migration, birth and death rates up to the end of the 21st century predicts that white Britons will decline from 73% of the population to 57% by 2050 before slipping into a minority by 2063. And again, these are the kinds of things that people are concerned about, because as Matt Goodwin says, this is not just about numbers, it's about culture, and it's about how the culture becomes kind of watered down, and how more and more people, say for example, my children end up sort of perhaps marrying people who were not from this country, and then their kids are, they can only trace their sort of heritage in Britain back 2 generations. That's basically what he's saying.
Yes.
Some people will say, oh, we don't mind about that, that's all fine. Well, most people would say, well, actually, no, we do have a heritage that's worth preserving.
Well, exactly, because I think it all goes back to being sort of proud of who we are, proud of our history. For too long we've been told not to be proud of our history and how terrible we were to have this awful empire that did such terrible things, forgetting completely all of the good things that it did in terms of ending slavery in certain parts. And so, I think when you lose your heritage and when you lose your history, then obviously that's a fundamentally bad thing, because the preservation of your country, what you've stood for, what you've done in the world, and what you've done, all the good things that you've done, lose that, then you've got no history, you've got no base, you've got no foundation, you don't know as a country what you believe in, what you stand for.
And you can only do one thing to fixing the foundations of the country there. Let's get another voice note from Chris.
Good morning, Mike. Chris in Northants here. Enjoying the show? I don't know why you're surprised that old two-tier care appointed
Sorry, we've already done that one. My apologies. This one from Liz in Norfolk, who says, sorry, Mike, you're daft about the RAF. OK, a plane to fly needs a pilot, but the pilot relies on the engineers to maintain the plane and make sure it's safe to fly. Each plane needs one pilot, but a team of engineers. Pilots are the glamour and brave, but it is the team on the ground who keep the planes flying. Yeah, I get that, Liz. I get the fact that the team on the ground are important, but it's rather ironic, is it not, and pissy kind of typical of Keir Starmer to pick a person who can't fly a plane to be in charge of an air force, which is all about flying planes. And of course the engineers need to be there, but you wouldn't put an engineer in a Formula 1 car and ask them to go up against Max Verstappen, would you? No, you wouldn't. And you wouldn't put the person in charge of the Formula 1 team who's never driven a car, who doesn't know how to drive, would you? I mean, it's just a simple fact, it seems to me. Matt in Hove says, if these migrants only come when it's a lovely sunny day in the Channel, how can they be so desperate to flee war? Both can't be true. It's a good point. This is Morning Glory. Oh, now we've got a voice there from Pete, sorry.
Just heard what you said about the police on the front news of the newspaper, like they need more money or they're just going to have to ignore crime. Don't they ignore crime anyway? I mean, the amount of times where things have been reported and it takes them days to even turn up at your door, if they even turn up at all. What a joke. Have a good day, mate.
Very good one, Pete. Thank you very much indeed. Charlie Rowley's here. We've got loads more stories to talk about, including there's a really nice piece in the Mail about the little things that drive us mad. Apart from the government, we'll give you something else to think about, because we can't just talk about the government. There are many other things. And there's one town in the UK which has already had its first hosepipe ban of the year. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. It's 6:40. The sun is up. You might not be up and about yet, but you will be very soon. And it's actually not a bad day. Coming up later on in the show this morning, Robert Jenrick is going to join us. He's, of course, the Shadow Home Secretary. No, he's not. He's the Shadow Justice Secretary, isn't he? He's been out and about, of course, doing more videos. This one that he's done this week is not about shoplifting. It's not about people fare dodging on the underground. It's about Lord Hermer and all the ghastly people that he seems to have found himself representing. As you can imagine, the legal profession is up in arms about it, calling it a disgrace. I saw David Gauke yesterday, former Tory, who is now in charge of the sort of prison reform business for this country, basically saying that it was a disgrace that Robert Jenrick put this out. He knows very well that people who are in the law business sometimes have to have clients that are not exactly as they would like them to be. But of course, Robert Jenrick points out that in Lord Hermer's case is not true at all. Let's look at a couple of other stories in the news this morning, though. Meghan Markle, it has to be said. Charlie Rowley's here with me. Apparently, he's worried that she might be a bit annoying. I'm pausing Jam Firm in case it gets annoying, she says on social media. This is in The Sun, page 7. She's delayed plans for a new batch of her very pricey jams, cookie mix and herbal teas, and she doesn't want customers to find her food brand annoying. I suspect that it's got more to do with nobody really wanting them, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, and I think, her business career has been littered with errors, with sort of the trademark name of the organisation, the art, whatever it was, the foundation of something or other.
Yes.
And she lies awake at night until 3 in the morning worrying about, because she did this as a hobby and it sold out, as she claimed in the first instance.
She only sold out about 10 jars of it, didn't she?
Yes, friends and family, I'd imagine. Or probably, not even...
And a few celeb mates.
Has she got any friends? Has she got any family?
She sent them to some celeb mates
friends.
who then sort of put pictures of them on Instagram and went, oh, your jam is so great.
Yes,
it's really amazing. But yeah, the woman just doesn't seem to have any kind of filter at all, does she?
No, but does she look as though she's someone that stays awake at night until 3 a.m. worrying about business? Does she
the
have
only
any
reason,
sort of...
The only reason she's up at 3 a.m. is to send, really horrible emails to people, apparently. Do you remember when she was in Kensington Palace and people would say they would get emails from her like 5 o'clock in the morning,
right,
absolutely roasting them,
right,
and, being bullied by her, which is an allegation which has never really been properly discussed.
No.
Meanwhile, it turns out Prince Harry has somehow run up a legal bill for us, not for himself. His will be just as bad, for about 700,000 quid. For all of the various legal cases he brought against the Home Office. The most recent one added another 100,000 to what was already a £600,000 bill. Now, there's a belief that he will probably be getting that bill and he'll probably have to pay it. But that's how much his, so-called crusade against the Home Office cost the taxpayer.
Totally. And this comes at a time when he obviously said, yes, I need security, I can't come to the UK, because, and then he was pictured knocking on random doors down a particular street looking for a friend.
Looking for a friend. Who can blame him? We've all been there.
In search for a friend, yes.
Searching for a friend in the middle of the afternoon.
Exactly. And so there's
Get a job, for heaven's sake.
And then, trying to want to change his name to Spencer. There's a number of stories that are coming out that just continue to fuel this idea that this is a guy who, I do feel sorry for. He's made huge mistakes and has been a total... baby in a man's...
I think it's the word you're looking for.
Yes. But I do feel a little bit sorry for him because he clearly is lost and, he's thrown his toys out the pram. I think he obviously wants to make some sort of reparations with his family, but you can't do it through the media. You can't criticise the media for being so intrusive. You can't say, I can't come to the UK because of all the... So, if you want to be part of the family, if you want to be part of the fold, just get back in, admit your mistakes, apologise to the people you need to apologise to that you've turned over, like your dad, who happens to be the king.
And try and draw a line under it.
And draw a line under it.
And say, stop complaining.
And stop complaining. But don't do it through this whole, it's self-entitlement of, I need security, because he's just... It is embarrassing, and it's just... as I say, I'm starting to feel sorry for him because even when he did that BBC interview to talk about why he needed... It was littered with errors. He was still saying, when government ministers, as soon as they leave office, they still get protection. They don't.
Well, he's deluded. He doesn't know very much, does he?
It's a far cry from reality.
It's a far cry from reality, and he's not very bright, I think, the trouble is, at the end of the day. So that's all going to go a bit badly for him. Let's have a look at what's on page 7 of the Daily Mail, because this is sort of something that piqued my interest. Top micro stresses, this is. The Americans got a phrase for it: "Don't sweat the small stuff." And it seems they may be right. Studies found that daily micro stresses, such as being stuck in traffic, losing your keys, can trigger the same exhaustion as a single major life event. So obviously, I'm going to ask you if any of these things annoy you. Stuck in traffic, 53%. Bin bag breaks as you take it out. That's pretty stressful.
Yes.
Losing your keys. That is really... I mean, misplacing them is one thing. Actually losing them. People who walk slowly, right, are particularly bad on the underground. House being untidy, spilling something on the carpet, misplacing your mobile, or having it stolen. I found that to be quite stressful.
Yes. Especially if it's in London through someone on a bike.
Which is exactly what happens to me. Wi-Fi buffering when watching a show, that is very annoying. I've got terrible... For some reason, the Wi-Fi in my house is awful. And I can't seem to do anything about it. I've changed it several times. I can't get fibre because it doesn't go into the building, even though it's in the street. And so I tend to just use like 5G when I'm at home because the Wi-Fi is so terrible. Forgetting to charge your phone overnight. I did that this morning. I came in, the iPad was uncharged. And thankfully, Damien was able to come up miraculously, not with one charger, 2 chargers. So now we're okay. Losing the TV remote. Worse than that, actually, is when you use the TV remote and the batteries have run out and you haven't got any other batteries. That's quite bad. In a rush and can't find an outfit. Is that one for you?
Well, as you can tell.
You've dressed very well this morning. Forgetting to put the bins out. That's not as annoying as putting the bins out and then forgetting to collect them.
No. But I think they all add up to about if you're in a rush. Because if you're in a rush and you think, right, I'll quickly take the bins out, and then they break, you think, oh my God, that's a disaster. If you're then, if you're in a rush and stuck in a traffic jam, that is the biggest issue. I mean, the thing about driving, I don't drive anymore because I don't have a car. Not since the incident. No.
You have to tell me about the incident. That's another time.
Only because I moved to London and so I don't drive anymore.
You don't need to.
I don't need to drive. But there is nothing more infuriating than being in a car in a traffic jam because you can't do anything else. You can't read, you can't then start replying to emails, you can't. And that plays into walking behind slow people. I cannot bear sometimes. But it's only my fault maybe because I'm in a rush. But you're surrounded by tourists in London who are just dawdling. And you think this is central London. We need to keep moving. We need to be busy people. That's why I'm a huge fan of New York. As much as I love London, New York, I still think there's that element of busy people.
There is. But they still, I mean, I lived in New York for 10 years and we still had the same problem because if I used to have this rule that I would never stop, and how you get to the crosswalk, as they call it, and it says, don't walk or walk. And so you'd sort of learn how to crisscross through the different sections so that you didn't ever stop. But sometimes you'd get some tourist that would stagger out of a shop and just stop in front of you. You go, don't. And I've seen people like just pushing them, just get out of the way. I had a Chinese woman falling on me the other day at the bottom of an escalator in London Bridge. The full story will be on Grumpy Old Men, which we just recorded yesterday. But I mean, it was a very bizarre episode where she kind of fell backwards, having lost her balance at the bottom of an escalator, and I just kind of caught her by her elbows and pushed her back up again, and just carried on walking. And nobody said anything. She didn't say thank you. I didn't say hope you're okay. It was just one of those weird scenes, like something out of a film. Very weird. Anyway, so listen, if you've got any particular stresses and strains you want to talk about this morning, I think all of these are definitely good. But you might find something else particularly annoying that we haven't mentioned, so do let us know. First hosepipe ban of the year, Sun page 17. This is where I suppose the serious business of the water business, because we heard yesterday that Thames Water didn't get their deal that they thought they were getting. And this is another lie, by the way, because Steve Reed apparently claimed, the Environment Secretary, that something like £100 billion or something was going to be pumped into the water system, and apparently it turns out that's not coming in. This private investment isn't anywhere near coming in.
Yes, this US company, I think, pulled out at the last minute. And Steve Reed, as the Environment Secretary, said that there's no real plans at the minute. There's no real plans for anything, it seems, but there's no real plans to nationalise, which again would be a huge bill on the taxpayers.
Well, again, presumably you can't say they're going to nationalise because Rachel Reeves won't give them the money.
No.
Or there isn't any money. But Village of the Band is what it says here. First hosepipe ban of the year has been imposed on a tiny village where water levels have become critically low. Yulegreave in Derbyshire has had its own water supply since 1829. but it's had 2 months of dry spell, so now they haven't got any water.
No, and they've been told that they can only have a shower as opposed to bath. I mean, I've not had a bath for years. I mean,
who has baths these days? I mean, you only really do it if you're sort of luxuriating on holiday, don't you?
Exactly.
In a hotel or something, and you go, oh, it's a nice big bath, might as well have one.
Yes.
Who's got time?
Exactly. So showers only, peak time, I think, restrictions for 2 months. But again, people will just ask, we're surrounded by water.
I know.
We're an island.
Yeah.
And, there are 2 new reservoirs I know that are being built, which
they won't be built for years.
But they won't be built for years. So this problem will just keep going. And, not only is the weather, when the weather gets good, water dries up, we have a lot more people coming into the country.
Right.
It's all blamed, the government just blames everything on the weather.
The weather. It's going to rain this week, so we should get some replenishment. But of course, most of that rainwater will just disappear into the ground. Nobody will collect it because there's hardly any reservoirs. And the water companies still haven't stopped leaking billions of litres of water into the ground every day.
Yep.
Let's have a quick look at the front page of The Sun. They've got Maddie Cops search barns in the top right-hand corner. That search for any sign of Madeleine McCann still goes on down in Portugal. They haven't found anything yet. But the main story is about Love Island, which I guess is not a show that I watch particularly, but is watched quite a lot by a lot of people. And it's all underway, I think. But the Love Island star Kyle Ashman has been sensationally axed from the show, which is an interesting word to use, because he apparently was arrested over a machete attack. At some point.
Yes. And this attack, it sounds awful. I mean, we don't know at this stage. It sounds like he wasn't charged, but he was arrested as part of this this gang. But obviously, ITV don't want any kind of tarnished reputation because it's been besotted. This programme, Love Island, has been besotted by people that have had to leave, have been chucked out because of violence, because of their previous history, because of.
I'm amazed it's still going. To be honest.
Well, Caroline Flack, obviously, was a former presenter who ended up taking her own life because, and the idea of treatment of care for people when the contestants when they come out, it's just on social media, it's absolutely ridiculous. But the attack that has allegedly taken place is horrendous because it was at a funeral.
Right. And masked thugs.
Masked thugs absolutely entered a wake and started to attack a man that nearly severed off his arm. He was in hospital for 2 weeks after that. And this Kyle Ashman, was allegedly part of that group, 23 years old, who was supposed to be appearing, in Love Island this week, has now been axed.
So you won't be seeing him.
So you won't be seeing him.
That's the front page of The Sun. We'll be back. It's 6:52 after this. Quick voice note from Perry.
Morning, Mike. I actually think this might actually work. When they're standing at Calais, the smugglers will be standing there saying, please form an orderly queue and please have your ID numbers ready before boarding. Yeah, I think, Mike, this really will work. I think we should give it a chance anyway. See how it works.
I was waiting for the joke at the end of that from Perry, but I think he's actually serious. I mean, form an orderly queue. Why don't you just do that at the airport? Isn't that the way you should be coming into the country?
Well, exactly, and I think the whole point is that unless you've got UK people, border force, based in those countries where these people come to then give an ID, but you have to process them before coming in.
Surely that would be sensible. I mean, even that would be more sensible. We have a processing centre in France, so that you come into the processing centre, and if you're allowed to enter Britain, they give you a green sticker or something, and if you're not, you get a red sticker, and you go back out the other way, and you stay in France.
Yes.
Something like that.
Something like that.
I mean, anything's better than just waiting to see whether it's going to rain.
Yes, exactly.
Yvette Cooper's weather plan to stop the migrants. 6:53.
the French police will now be able to catch these people in shallow water. I can't go on anymore. It is above my penis. What am I to do? I mean, what an absurd ruling. What an absurd ruling. You know?
It's just ridiculous. Yeah, but for 2 years and 3 months, they've been watching the migrant, waving them goodbye, because they've got a law that bans them from paddling in the sea.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. Charlie Rowley's here as well at 6:57. Christina says, Mike, so the head of the RAF can't fly a plane. Best joke I've heard this morning. Classic that Starmer picked him, says Christina. And one from Damon in Wigan says, Britain is not on a war footing, because if we were, then all politicians and their families would be in hiding down a rabbit hole, and the British people would be left alone and expected just to get on with it, because the establishment will be nowhere to be seen. Very good point. Now, big story on the front page of the Telegraph this morning. This broke sort of quite late last night. Basically, Trump attacks BBC over Hamas coverage. Here's Caroline Leavitt, who's actually the White House press secretary, last night.
The administration is aware of those reports, and we are currently looking into the veracity of them, because unfortunately, unlike some in the media, we don't take the word of Hamas with total truth. We like to look into it when they speak, unlike the BBC, who had multiple headlines. They wrote, Israeli tank kills 26, Israeli tank kills 21, Israeli gunfire kills 31, Red Cross says 21 people were killed in an aid incident, and then, oh wait, they had to correct and take down their entire story, saying we reviewed the footage and couldn't find any evidence of anything. Oh. Okay, so we're going to look into reports before we confirm them from this podium or before we take action, and I suggest that journalists who actually care about truth do the same to reduce the amount of misinformation that's going around the globe on this front.
I mean, it's a pretty serious allegation, isn't it, from the White House, from the President, effectively, as Telegraph are calling it, an attack on the BBC, whose reputation is now just in the gutter on coverage of Israel, particularly.
Yeah, exactly, because this is all part of about getting aid into a particular part of Gaza, which had been blocked in the past, but there's an organisation that's been set up to deliver that aid. But there have been, it is right to say that there have been people that are trying to access that aid that have been killed. Yeah. But the propaganda war, which the BBC clearly believes.
But the IDF say it's Hamas that are killing them.
Exactly, but the BBC have suggested that it's exactly it's the IDF that are killing the Gazans, whereas actually Hamas and people there, because they do evil things, as we know from Hamas, have been there to attack.
And it is that extraordinary belief that somehow we should treat Hamas in the same way that we treat the Israeli government, and that we should believe what they say in the same way that we should believe. And I can't believe that the BBC have fallen this far. Yes. Absolutely dreadful. Charlie, thank you so much. We've got so many great stories to cover. We'll get to most of them, hopefully, over the course of the next 3 hours. We'll see you after the news.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yay!
8722, start your message with the word talk. Who would you send to space and why?
The person I would love to send to space would be Mr. Keir Starmer. And then I would tell the Galactic Empire that he was part of the Rebel Alliance and let them blow him away with the Death Star. No Brits was involved, no fingers could be pointed.
You carry on taking the medication, George. Yes, I'd send all the Labour government to space with a one-way ticket and throw in the SNP for being useless. They're all a bunch of... Oh, all right, fair enough.
One person, quite frankly, I think needs to go to space in a one-way journey is Jeremy Kyle. He goes on about his age one more time, how he's 60 this year, he was 59 last year, repetitively over the course of the weeks and months. We have to hear him, I'm 60 this year, I'm 60 this year.
Richard Tice, did you put that cheeky bugger up to that?
I'm hoping he's going to send me the invoice because that was absolutely brilliant.
Which MP would you send to space?
Oh, no, I'll get in terrible trouble if I answer that. But it's fair to say there's quite a long list.
The sad thing is about sending people into space on a one-way ticket is I don't think that we've built a spaceship big enough to take the lunatics off this planet. I mean, from the net zero loonies to the transgender loonies to the racists to the terrorists, there is just so many to the wokerati. We need some big spaceships.
Big spaceships.
Good evening. I never know how you're going to start this conversation, Jeremy.
Katy Perry went to space today, OK? Who would you send... I'd love her to say what I wanted to, but I'd never disrespect her. Who would you send to space who could never come back?
Well, I'd be happy to send Ed Miliband to space, I think.
Oh, that is an outrageous question, so I'm not even going to answer that question.
Sam Matterface, do you get the job, yeah? Go on.
No, Sam Matterface, I tell you what... There's no.
I think David Lammy would be the person I'd want to send up in space and never come back again.
Yeah, the problem is how much would the bill be for him to munch through whatever food on the way there?
Hey, it worked.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 3 minutes past 7. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 for a glorious hours of Morning Glory, the greatest breakfast show that was ever invented, I have to say. We've been having quite a lot of fun this morning with the weather. I've got this from Julian, who says, Morning, Mike. Just as the weather report, quote, UV index and pollen warning through the summer, I wonder if they're going to add a dinghy crossing index depicted by a small, medium or large dinghy. Now, here is the weather, sponsored by Starmer's Cruises. Very good idea. Have a good day. Julian, thank you very much indeed. We've got a voice note from Damon. We've been talking this morning about little things that annoy you. Here's Damon.
You're talking about things that infuriate you. Well, I mean, one of the biggest bugbears, I think, is this lying, useless government. Every day they infuriate millions of Brits in Britain with the lying, constant streams of garbage, tripe, deliberately doing things behind your back, deliberately taking us back into Europe. If the British government doesn't infuriate you and make your blood boil, nothing will.
I mean, that is exactly right. I mean, we've got this morning top news from the Downing Street headquarters of the Keir Starmer administration. Basically, Starmer has betrayed us on migrant figures. We'll be talking to Alt Mehmet about that because Rachel Reeves is now saying that the only reason we can't stop the migrants is because the weather is too nice. It turns out the trade deal that we said we had done with the United States of America has not been done at all. And in fact, Donald Trump is putting a 50% tariff on British steel. He's giving us a slight reprieve in order to negotiate a better deal than that, but as of now, Keir Starmer's claim that we've done a trade deal with the United States of America looks like yet another lie from the king of the liars. Also, the new RAF boss has just been appointed by Keir Starmer, and he can't fly a plane. Absolutely brilliant. Well played. We've got the first hosepipe ban of the year, a little village somewhere up in Yorkshire, I believe. Meanwhile, NATO, of course, after all of that toing and froing about how much money Keir Starmer's going to spend on the frequently warned war that is coming our way, is it 2%? Is it 2.5%? Is it 3%? Apparently NATO are going to tell him that he's going to have to put 3.5% of GDP into defence spending because that will be a new requirement from NATO as dictated by the President of the United States, Donald Trump. Rachel Reeves also has been flying a suicide drone, bizarrely, crashed it into after something. We're not quite sure why. We're not quite sure what she was doing and why was she getting anywhere near military equipment. This is a woman who destroys everything she touches, including the economy, including hospitality, including this entire country. 0344 499 1000 is the number. Coming up, we'll be talking about all of those stories. Also, Labour are going to destroy 5,000 natural habitats with their plan to put a load of houses on places like the Peak District just outside of Manchester. Absolutely incredible, unbelievable. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Vern in Southampton says, hi Mike, along with the new RAF chief that can't fly, apparently Starmer's looking for a new Navy chief that can't swim. Mike and Charlie, in case of nuclear war, says Lorraine, will my tube of Savlon and a box of plasters be okay? Probably, yeah, because, of course, we're being warned on the front page of the I newspaper this morning that the UK is going to stockpile military medical supplies for nuclear attacks. The NHS needs to think about mass casualties and what war means, says General Sir Richard Barrons. I mean, why are they coming out with all this stuff? You know, is Russia really an imminent threat? I mean, they haven't managed to beat Ukraine yet. Here's one from Joanna in Salisbury. I think Starmer is using defence as another lie. The Chagos Islands could easily be categorised as defence. God knows the truth about the finances of that deal. Well, this is the thing. They're going to have a £40 billion shortfall now because NATO want them to spend 3.5% of GDP, which Rachel Reeves has said they basically don't have. She's spending £15 billion, meanwhile, on putting a few bus routes around Britain, places where there aren't any buses currently, and improving some train services. So, I mean, that's not really what you do if there's a war footing and you need to spend a load of money on submarines. But we also know that John Healey, who's the Defence Secretary, appeared when he was interviewed yesterday, not on my show because he wouldn't come on my show. In fact, his junior minister wouldn't come on our show either after promising to come on. Apparently he found an alternative commitment that he'd forgotten about in Parliament. He doesn't know how much the submarines cost. He doesn't know how many submarines we're going to build. Doesn't sound like somebody in charge of a war machine, does it? Let's talk to Joanna Bell, political commentator, because it's that time. 7 minutes past 7. Joanna, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. How are you today?
Yeah, not bad at all, not bad at all. We've got apparently a war-footing government who don't know the cost of war, don't know how much money they're going to be able to spend on war, don't know how many submarines they're going to build for war, don't know how many people that they're going to hire for war. But what they do know is we've got a new chief of the RAF who can't fly a plane.
You couldn't make it up, Mike. I mean, you know, it's just gone from bad to worse.
It has.
Defence has been neglected in favour of welfare and the NHS, unfortunately. You know, you've got people coming over, we're paying for their hotels for 2 years, they're not working. That's where all of our money's going. And you know, it's leaving us vulnerable and we won't be able to defend ourselves.
No. Well, let's have a look at what Keir Starmer said yesterday about 3% as a defence target.
On the question of 2.5%, when we won the general election in 2024 last year, we said we'd do 2.5% within this Parliament. As the circumstances dictated, we then brought that forward to 2027. So you can see the way I work, which is being clarity about what we want to achieve, putting in the date when we know exactly how we can achieve it. The same with the 3%. That is what we want to achieve because of the different world that we live in. But I'm not going to put arbitrary dates on that percentage. We will do that as we did with 2.5 in a worked-through way to deliver the capability that we need under this review.
He just talks in riddles, doesn't he? So he doesn't want to put an arbitrary date on something, but he does want to put an arbitrary date on something else. So, I mean, he doesn't really know. And all of this toing and froing about whether it was 2.5, 2, 3, has all been over-usurped now by NATO, saying it's going to have to be 3.5.
Well, he's just embarrassed himself once again. You know, 2.3%, and then he said, oh, I can't guarantee that it might go up to 2.5%, and now NATO are looking for 3.5%. So, you know, there's talk about them getting rid of the Department of Culture, Arts, Media and Sport, and Lisa Nandy's going to go. I mean, that looks imminent.
It does. Well, I don't really can work out what she's done since she's been in charge of it. I mean, apart from looking like, I don't wish to be unkind to her, but she looks like she's been eating quite a lot since she became minister. But I mean, we've got Alex Brummer writing in the Mail saying Labour's facing a crunch that will make the trust market meltdown look like a tea party. He reckons that because of this defence spend, they're going to be going back to the sterling crisis of 1976. Now, I'm old enough to remember that. Nobody had any money, and the Labour government had to go cap in hand to the IMF to borrow enough money to salvage the economy.
I mean, it's embarrassing, you know, and some of these people, I can guarantee you Lisa and Andy, who you were talking about, is going to rock up at Glastonbury, which is coming up this month.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think any of the ministers heading that department have ever really made any great strides. And, you know, I don't think that it's actually really important to the country to have it. But where are they going to get this money?
Well, they don't know. I mean, according to The Guardian this morning, Rachel Reeves is spending another £15 billion on transport around Britain, basically announcing £15 billion for trams, trains and buses outside London, because this is a charm offensive to keep them quiet on the back benches, because they're saying, well, hang on a minute, what happens to all that public spending? But they haven't got the money. They can't afford really to pay for anything. And so I don't know where the money's going to come from.
Well, the immigrant crisis has to be solved. They need to have these people working. Why are they not filling up potholes on the road? Why are they, unemployed for 2 years and we're footing the bill? That's the problem.
Yeah.
The welfare bill is so huge that it's affecting our defences. And, you know, Rachel Reeves is obviously trying to get the votes by putting in this transport in the north. But, you know, it's not going to work. It's just going to be another mess. Like everything that they've done so far has turned into a complete mess, and they've, you know, done so many U-turns. It's ridiculous. You know, we need proper leadership and someone who knows how to handle the economy. And Rachel Reeves is just anti-business, anti-innovation. You know, she's destroying the country.
Yeah. Well, every single measure that she's brought in has harmed the economy without any question, without any exception. And you're right to say that it's all happening up north, this £15.6 billion package. It's all going to places where basically they think Labour voters are. So, you know, the package includes £2.4 billion for the West Midlands to extend the metro, £2.1 billion to start building West Yorkshire's mass transit system by 2028. Greater Manchester will receive £2.5 billion for projects including new tram stops in Bury, Manchester and Oldham. An extension of the tram network to Stockport. It just goes on and on and on. So any place where there's Conservative voters or Reform voters or Lib Dems, they get nothing.
That's the exact thing, you know, and it's just really, you know, I hate to be cynical about it, but, you know, so far everything they've done has just turned to, as we say, murdy. But, you know, at the end of the day, she needs to go. This whole government needs to go.
Yeah.
Because they're just going to destroy the country. And if World War III is imminent, then we can't really have these clowns in government.
Oh, can you imagine? I can't imagine anything worse than this guy as a wartime Prime Minister. But again, you know, nobody really believes them when they say these things, that, you know, there's a war imminent, you know, we keep getting attacked by Russia every single day. You know, my listeners and viewers this week have just completely rejected that and said, well, if that was really true, why are they behaving in the way that they are? Why don't they know more about the military? Why are they spending money on things that cost so much? Billions and billions on asylum seekers, billions and billions on migrants coming into this country. If we're really at war, surely we can stop people coming in on the small boats, which of course we can't.
Well, that's what happens when you elect a human rights barrister as your prime minister. You know, he represented these people, so he's not going to push them back. The red tape is gone. There's no reason why we can't, you know, if you can't push the people back, you can certainly get them working and, you know, stop this huge bill that we have to pay, you know, for 2 years for each person that comes in. They should be working. In America, if you come in as an illegal immigrant, you know, you're not you might be given somewhere for 2 months, maybe, if you're lucky. Yeah. But you got to work. You got to work and work and work and work. So what they do in Dubai is, and actually when they do start working, they send the money out of the country. So why Dubai works so well is that if you're European, and if you're Filipino or Indian or Bangladeshi, the European gets paid 3 or 4 times more because they spend the money in the country. Yeah. Whereas, you know, the Filipinos and the Indians are, you know, a lot of them send the money back home to their families. So a lot of that money goes out of the country when they're here, which is, you know, really bad for the economy. So there needs to be measures, or at least when the asylum seekers do start working, they have to pay back the money that they received.
Yeah, but the trouble is that there's no coherent thinking behind any of this stuff, because they keep telling us. I mean, we just saw one that they put out yesterday, a number 10 video, saying our plan is working. Well, the plan's clearly not working, and they think if they can keep telling us that the plan's working, that we'll all somehow believe it. We'll all be hypnotised into thinking, oh, well, there must be something good. I mean, Yvette Cooper yesterday spent all day telling us that she couldn't stop the boats because the weather's too good. You know, I mean, seriously, that's her defence as to why it's all gone wrong.
I mean, look, it's the blind leading the blind. You know, the Rwanda, they need to do another Rwanda. As it said, you know, the Rwanda scheme did deter the small boats, so why not come up with another scheme to deter people coming over on the boats again? You know, it was embarrassing what happened with the Albanian Prime Minister the other week, with Keir being completely embarrassed when he thought that he would take our asylum seekers.
No.
But surely there's another country that might be sympathetic.
Well, I mean, there is no country that's sympathetic to Britain. I mean, the French, as far as we're concerned, think we are a laughing stock. One of the French politicians this week said that Britain was basically El Dorado for asylum seekers. And the Mail this morning, again, has got a piece on the front page saying there is actually now evidence that the Rwanda plan was deterring the small boats when the Tories were still in power, because quite often people who would have come when the weather was reasonably good didn't come because they thought they might be getting sent to Rwanda. And of course, as soon as Labour got in, they didn't even bother trying to see if the scheme would work. They just did away with it on the basis that they'd come up with something better. Well, so far, they still haven't come up with anything better.
Well, that's the thing. And now Yvette Cooper, she wants to introduce a digital ID to crack down on illegal immigration. Like, I just don't really understand where they're coming up with these ideas. You know, it's really, you know, ridiculous. No. It's like, you know, like I say, it's the blind leading the blind. They have no handle on how to actually be productive, or at least make the best out of the people that are coming over and get them to work.
That's true. Absolutely right. Joe, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Joanna Bell, political commentator there on the madness of this government and the complete and utter shambolic nature of how they do everything. It really is quite extraordinary. Coming up, Mount Merritt is going to talk to us. We've got a big piece in the Mail today basically saying that Starmer has betrayed this country on the numbers and on the whole migrant process, because they don't have a clue. Let's get a voice note from Steve on things that are annoying.
One thing I find intensely annoying is going into maybe a pub or a cafe or other venue and they don't take cash. I find this so frustrating. It's so important that people wake up and we do not lose cash.
I think it's becoming more and more rare, isn't it? I mean, I went past a fish and chip shop the other day down in Sussex. They had a great big sign up saying, we take cash. In fact, we only take cash, because harder and harder now to find those places. But you're right, it's important to keep spending cash, because otherwise everything becomes digital. And then what do you do when it all fails? Because, I mean, I've been in several situations recently where supermarket tills have stopped working. There's been some hacking event that's gone on. And unless you've got any cash, you can't buy anything. Because they're standing there going, oh, we can't take any cards, we can't take any contactless, because the payments are all frozen because our systems have been hacked. I mean, at Marks & Spencer's you couldn't buy anything. And it happened to the Co-op as well. And so, but it happens also on a fairly regular basis just because, you know, electronics fail from time to time. So I always make sure I carry some cash in my pocket just in case. It's 7:18.
So yesterday, a man was found guilty of public order offences after he burned a Quran outside the Turkish embassy earlier in the year. And I think it's wrong to use the Public Order Act from 1986 in this way. It's a new thing, and we need to amend the law to make it absolutely clear that there is a right to criticise and protest peacefully and without inciting people against religious beliefs, and in particular Islam, which is where we have these problems emerging.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:21. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. Of course, we are the home of common sense. We've been talking about things that we find annoying. Losing keys, flickering Wi-Fi, forgetting to put the bins out, can't find an outfit, forgetting to charge the phone overnight, which I was a bit guilty of this morning. Let's get a voice note from John.
I just heard your conversation there about bins. What about this for a bin story? One of my neighbours put out their garden waste to get taken away by the council. The council refused to empty her garden waste because in the bin she had flowers that she had bought in a shop and thrown them in the bin to get taken away. They said that the flowers hadn't grown in her garden, so technically it wasn't garden waste, so they left her bin.
Deary me.
Mike, this country is ruined right down the gurgler. Have a good day, mate.
John, thank you very much indeed. That is bonkers, isn't it? I mean, how do they know the flowers weren't grown in the garden? I mean, what are they, horticultural experts now? Yeah, sorry, the bin man's arrived. We brought a horticultural expert with us. He's testing the soil to see whether or not those daffodils were actually grown in your garden. Because if they weren't, we're not going to take your bin away. How bleeding ridiculous is that? I mean, heaven's sake. I mean, thank goodness there's going to be some scrutiny now of some of these councils because reform have taken over a few of them. And maybe, just maybe, common sense will prevail. And when you put garden waste out, as long as it's something that grows in a garden, surely that's all right, isn't it? So it's not like you're putting a cat in there or anything. 7:23. Let's talk to Alp Mehmet, chairman of Migration Watch. He's got a big piece in the Mail today. Headline says this: Starmer can dress up the figures, but he's betrayed the British people. Alp, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
So the weather's good again today. So it's bad news for old Yvette Cooper, isn't it? Because she's now got the final kind of defence mechanism of this government appears to be the weather.
Well, and you know, we've been saying for some time that the weather actually is far more effective and produces results than the government in stopping people coming across the channel illegally. And that's the position we're in, really. Whatever the government says, you can take it either with a pinch of salt or turn it on its head. They're not stopping the boats. They're not going to stop the boats. Everything they've done and said, as I've said time and time again, with you and others, is going to encourage people to come over, not discourage them. They're doing absolutely zilch, nothing to stop those who are coming across illegally.
No, exactly right. And you point out that he put that ridiculous tweet out a few days ago where he says, I understand why you're angry about the small boats. I'm angry too. And it's like, well, no, you're not. You know, this is a guy who, up until relatively recently, was all for open door immigration. He was all for, you know, international borders being pretty much done away with and having this kind of globalist view of the world where we must help every single person. He's a human rights lawyer. You know, it's just totally against his whole kind of raison d'etre to even want to smash the gangs. And he talks about how, oh, I was in charge of the CPS. I know a bit about smashing organised crime. Well, he doesn't appear to know how to do it.
follow empathy is how I describe it in that piece in the Mail today.
Yes.
It's just really, it's laughable that we are going to believe that this man and this woman, Yvette Cooper, are actually going to do something significant to stop the boats, or indeed to reduce immigration. You know, one of the sort of spins that they put and sought to give the impression that they're being effective was to suggest that they were responsible for the decrease in net migration. It's halved. We've halved net migration. Well, it's not anything to do with what they've done.
No.
It's entirely to do with what the Tories belatedly put in place. What they've done so far and what they've said they're going to do is going to have very little impact on the flows, either of those coming in legally or indeed those who are coming illegally, which is now at record levels. It's at record levels and it's going to continue that way. We're going to get, at this rate, well over 50,000 this year, which will take us by the end of the year to 200,000 who have come across illegally in dinghies since 2018, when this all started. That's the size of a town like Luton, for goodness sake.
No, it's a massive, massive number of people. And we used to be told, didn't we, for years, oh, it's a relatively small number. I don't know why you're getting so excited about it. We have much more bigger problems than that in this country. Well, now immigration is the biggest problem this country has, without any question. But have a look at this video. This was put out yesterday by number 10 Downing Street. I don't know who's narrating it, but check it out.
Want to know how we're controlling our borders? Then watch this. We're working with our international allies to smash people smuggling gangs for good. We're giving law enforcement new powers to criminalise those who endanger their lives at sea, making sure every business carries out right-to-work checks, ending the exploitation of illegal labour. Our plan is working. Since July, we have returned nearly 30,000 people with no right to be here. Hundreds of boats and engines have been seized, and illegal working raids are up by 40%.
I mean, I don't know what you make of that. I find it extraordinary. I mean, the voice...
It's laughable.
The voiceover sounds like it's some bloke from the In-Betweeners, right? And and meanwhile, you know, our plan is working. You can't just say that when it's not working, clearly.
Well, this is clearly someone who has absolutely no idea about immigration policy or what is actually happening. It sounds to me like a very young person who's been told, read this out. And they've gone on to read it. I hear this sort of stuff from 17-year-olds, frankly, 18-year-olds. And my grandchildren of that sort of age speak a hell of a lot more sense than anything coming out of the government at the moment.
Yes. They really do, because, you know, we know several things are going on at the moment, right? We've got the French police who are doing absolutely nothing, despite being in receipt of about £500 million worth of our money. Keir Starmer said the other day, oh, that's going to change. You know, the French are going to go into the shallows of the water in France and stop them from leaving. Well, that's never going to happen. Why on earth would the French police stop them from leaving? All they want to do is for them to leave, and that's absolutely never going to change, is it?
Well, it's not going to change. I noticed that in the clip you've just shown, Mike, it wasn't French police that they had on screen. Yeah, there they go. That's not French. I suspect, I don't know. Is it Spanish?
I think it is Spanish police. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in fact, Yvette Cooper yesterday was saying we're talking about digital ID, but. Has she been told, is she aware that those coming across the channel haven't actually got any documents? They haven't got any passports. Where's digital ID going to come in actually stopping them coming across the channel. Once they've got here and they've sought asylum, those coming from countries like Afghanistan, Sudan, Somalia, Iran, most likely, they're never going to be sent back. You can have all the digital ID you like, but ultimately you're going to allow them to stay, which is what's happening. And then they'll get into our records with digital ID maybe, but nothing like that will happen until that stage, which means that the traffickers, the message that they get is, don't worry, you send them over, we'll send as many as you like over because you're going to let them in and then you're never going to get rid of them. Why wouldn't they come?
No, exactly.
Why wouldn't they come?
And it's a very sophisticated model. And while many of these young men won't have the money and the wherewithal to pay the traffickers to come, everybody knows what happens to them. When they get here, they become embroiled in sort of criminal gangs. They are then more or less, sort of tied to those criminal gangs who say, well, you owe us the equivalent of 5,000 quid. You're going to work for us in our gang until we get that worthwhile money out of you. And they trick many of them into coming here. And because you can tell by the way, the types of people that are coming off those boats, these are not doctors, these are not lawyers, these are not people who are coming here to contribute to this country. They're coming here to take part in a criminal enterprise. Some of them might even be worse than that. Some of them, as we know, might be spies from Iran. Some of them might be terrorists.
Yeah, absolutely. There are risks and dangers here that we seem to be capable of addressing. Of course, those coming across the channel, we don't know who they are. They could be terrorists. Some of them have shown themselves to be criminals or terrorists. Yeah. That really is a dereliction of duty on the part of our government, who are now accepting these people, primarily because our courts, when it goes to the courts, when it goes to appeal, what they're saying is that it's for the government to prove that these people are illegal, that these people are not genuine asylum seekers. At the same time, what they are saying is that we accept what you are saying, oh, illegal asylum seeker. We accept that you have come from a country where you're being persecuted, despite the fact that all we have is their word for it. It's an absolute disgrace.
It is a complete and utter shambles. And, of course, we've been playing this morning as well, we'll play it again later on in the show, Keir Starmer's statement that he made just before July the 4th of last year, where he stated that we are prepared for government, we are prepared in every department of state for government. He clearly wasn't prepared, certainly in the Home Office, and certainly not in the Foreign Office, and probably not in any other office that you could imagine either. Alp, very good to see you, good to talk to you. Alp Mehmet, Chairman of Migration Watch, big piece in the Mail today, as I say, the headline on which says Starmer can dress up the figures, but he has betrayed the British people. And he knows he has. And no number of ridiculous videos with soft porn music saying, our plan is working, will convince the people of this country that the plan is working, because it isn't. It's as simple as that. Apparently the Culture Department has been tough on Oasis tickets and tough on the causes of Oasis tickets, says Ian, talking about Lisa Nandy. Tony from Dorset says, we'll find a 3% defence spending straight away if the Russians start coming up the Thames. We will. And Stuart says, Mike, digital ID cards will only restrict law-abiding citizens. If illegal immigrants get a digital ID card, it's too late. That means they have already arrived. Absolutely right. Coming up, we're going to speak to LaDonna Harvey about Caroline Leavitt in the White House attacking the BBC. Let's get a voice note from Sean.
Morning, Mike. Sean from Grimsby here. Gotta love that Caroline Leavitt from America. What an excellent woman she is, standing up in the White House and rinsing the BBC for spreading guff. But the damage has already been done. Once they've printed it, I don't know why I have to pay for this. Great show, Mike.
Yeah, Caroline Leavitt, absolutely the queen of all press secretaries in America, doing a fantastic job working for the Trump administration. Here's Paul in Fife, who says, 3 cheers for the magnificent Caroline Leavitt, spokeswoman for Donald Trump. The president and Miss Leavitt attack on the beloved BBC was bang on, and I'm asking the question why our pathetic Westminster Parliament don't do likewise. Would Miss Leavitt be interested in a job here? Maybe the PM's job. She's brilliant. She really is. She hasn't put a foot wrong. She doesn't get anything wrong. She's well read. She's across every single question that she gets asked. She's quite a remarkable individual. And we would be very fortunate indeed if we had a press secretary that was anything close to that. We obviously don't, because we've got a government that doesn't know what it's doing. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:37. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through. We're talking about things that annoy you, little things that can annoy you, like broadband not working very well, or, missing your bus or your train. One here from Tony in Sussex. Another frustrating experience is waiting at the traffic lights and having to watch the countdown from 15 to 0 before we can move again. Also waiting for the cycle lane lights to change, even if there aren't any cyclists there waiting, because they couldn't be bothered to install sensors. Yeah, I know, there is that. Also, that thing that happens certainly in London, where the light goes green and you're about 5 cars back, and then after 3 cars go, it goes red again. And you go, oh. By the way, it turns out that Labour have postponed a £5,000 a head conference for executives and lobbyists just weeks before it was due to take place later on this month, with business advisors reporting, in their words, low demand for the event. Apparently, 2 highlights of the event were Rachel Reeves and Jonathan Reynolds, the fake solicitor, speaking at the conference. Invitees said would provide business leaders a unique opportunity to engage with Labour's plan to kickstart economic growth. Well, guess what? Nobody's buying it. Can't blame them either, is there? The country and the economy going down the gurgler. Let's talk to Donna Harvey from Arizona over in the United States of America, because we've already played you this once, but I think we should really play it again. This is Caroline Leavitt attacking the BBC in the White House.
The administration is aware of those reports, and we are currently looking into the veracity of them, because unfortunately, unlike some in the media, we don't take the word of Hamas with total truth. We like to look into it when they speak, unlike the BBC, who had multiple headlines. They wrote, Israeli tank kills 26, Israeli tank kills 21, Israeli gunfire kills 31, Red Cross says 21 people were killed in an aid incident, and then, oh wait, they had to correct and take down their entire story, saying we reviewed the footage and couldn't find any evidence of anything. Oh, Okay, so we're going to look into reports before we confirm them from this podium or before we take action, and I suggest that journalists who actually care about truth do the same to reduce the amount of misinformation that's going around the globe on this front.
Ouch. Very good morning to you, LaDonna.
That was a hell of a spanking,
wasn't it?
She just gave right there.
Wasn't it just? And well deserved, by the way, because the BBC has been getting a spanking from all sorts of places, not just from the United States, but from the Israeli government and also from people in this country, because they have been unbelievably sort of biased in favour of Palestine and in favour sometimes of Hamas propaganda.
Well, and that happens, pardon me, my allergies are kicking up. That happens a lot with media reports when you have anything that happens in Gaza. The immediate report is women and children dead in attack by Israeli army. And then you sort of winnow through it and you end up getting the facts, and it may or may not have been that story.
Right.
But challenging veracity certainly is a good idea, especially when, you're talking about Hamas, a terrorist organization.
Right. And then, of course, the lefties in the media will say, oh, but that's because you don't allow journalists into Gaza. And so, therefore, instead of actually accepting that they may have fallen for some propaganda, they then start attacking the critic by saying, well, that's because nobody's allowed in, so we can't possibly know what's going on. Well, in that case, why are you reporting it then?
Exactly. It's, it's just, you get, the rule of the newsroom is you get a press release from somebody that says a thing, and then you go and you find out if that thing is actually true.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what you would normally expect people to do. I mean, it's called old-fashioned journalism. Not much of it left, I'm afraid. I think you and I may be two of the few practitioners of it, LaDonna. Speaking of which, when you hear Keir Starmer saying that he's done a great deal with the US on tariffs for steel in particular, you should also question that. Here's what he said last July.
We'll remove tariffs on British steel and aluminium, reducing them to zero.
Sorry, he said that actually last month, is what I meant. So he came boasting away back to the UK after his meeting with Keir Starmer, where he did that horrible moment where he did, I have a letter for you from the King, like Uriah Heep style. And he said, we've done a great trade deal. And only last week they were boasting, the Labour government, that we've done these great trade deals with the biggest nations in the world, the United States, India and the European Union. Turns out they haven't done a trade deal with the US at all. And Trump basically has turned around and gone, nah, I don't think so. We'll put 50% tariffs on. We might give you a couple of days to figure it out. But basically, we haven't got a deal.
Right. And, and the weird thing is the only nation so far in all of the tariff back and forth thing that we've actually made a deal with is the UK. And if the steel wasn't included in those tariffs, then I'm not really sure what anybody was negotiating over. We do know that Mexico and Canada are having fits right now over steel and aluminum tariffs at 50%. Mexico is one of the biggest trading partners that we have for American steel. So this is something that is absolutely going to hit some of our biggest trading partners.
Yeah. Well, this is the same problem that's happening here because apparently the steel business and the car business is kind of in sort of paralysed mode because nobody knows exactly what's going on. According to a Tory politician, a Tory shadow trade minister yesterday, there is no deal even for the car tariffs to be reduced back down to 10%. So at the moment, they're still paying the higher tariff, I think of 25% on British cars going to the US. And as far as the steel exports are concerned, they've pretty much dried up.
Yeah. Well, it's, steel is really the building block outside of sand of the modern world.
Yeah.
I mean, everything that we have has some sort of metal in it, from, the aluminum and the precious metals in your phone to the car that you're driving, to everything that helps keep the rubber on the road.
Yeah.
Metals are really the bottom line. And if we don't have deals on these, then they're about to get very expensive for a whole lot of people.
Yeah, well, indeed. And also, particularly now that Keir Starmer seems to think we should be on a war footing, he's going to need all the steel here anyway to build all these submarines he wants to build.
Right. It's welcome to the new world. It's, where every tariff day is a new tariff day.
Yeah.
And we enjoy it so much.
But it just goes to show you, doesn't it? It just goes to show you that Donald Trump, the disruptor, is still managing to disrupt everything around the world.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the guy is, what is it that Ian Fleming said about James Bond, is a blunt instrument.
Yes.
And he's blunt instrumenting all over the world right now.
Yeah.
And setting everybody's teeth on edge. Rightly or wrongly, it's, the bottom line is if you hated him to begin with, you hate him now. Even more, it just is more stuff for you to hate him. And if you love him, you love the disrupting.
Yeah.
And that's what you voted for. So he's doing exactly what it is that he was voted in to do.
And are the
like
markets now kind of reacting slightly less dramatically to it because they can see that this is going to be going on for a while?
Yeah, the last few announcements, we had an announcement on what was it, the EU going into a 3-day weekend, so our Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah.
I think you guys had a bank holiday as well.
Yeah.
So we had to sit with that for a little while. We ended on a down market, and then everything was different, and it was back up on the Monday following. So, it's not, we're not seeing the giant swings that we were. But, his announcements coming out on Twitter and Truth Social do have a way of rattling Wall Street just a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Indeed. LaDonna, good to talk to you. LaDonna Harvey, Arizona Morning News. Thank you very much indeed. Talking of things that annoy you, Elle in Staffordshire says, my stressful trigger that infuriates me is when I hear Starmer's bleeding voice and I fume at his face on the TV. It's enough to tip me over the edge. Morning, Mike. Nothing more stressful than when you're in a rush and your child won't get their shoes and coat on. Says Rachel. And Anne from Kent, we should let Harry change his name to Spencer, but he must change his first name to Frank. Ooh, Betty. Yeah, very well said. 7:46.
The most disturbing element of this, I think, is the fact that this man was attacked by a knife-wielding maniac who stabbed him, and then as he was on the floor, he was kicked by a passing delivery driver.
Yeah.
Those two individuals have not yet faced trial. I know they will do. But as yet, this one's been very much rushed through. Apparently the words are the more frightening thing. But even worse than that, the judge in this case said, we know that your protest was disorderly and likely to stir disordered behaviour because you were attacked twice.
Across the UK, on on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:49. George on Canvey Island says this: I think Starmer deliberately left the USA trade deal unsigned so he could enable the deal with his beloved EU. Maybe so. And Dennis in Melton Mowbray says Starmer's judgment on friends and appointments is unbelievable. Hermer, Reeves, Tulip Sadiq, Jonathan Reynolds, Louise Haig and others who have either lied on their CV and or are completely useless. That's a very good point. And Vern says this: the British government has now spent over £13 million on the search for Madeleine McCann, who went missing in 2007. Ben Needham went missing in 1991, and the British government spent £1 million on the search. Why the huge difference? I can't explain that. I don't know. There's no question the Madeleine McCann story absolutely captured the nation when it happened, and an awful lot of people still think that there's a chance that she might be alive. But it's difficult to explain why some decisions are made like that. Ben Needham, I remember working years and years ago in Fleet Street. There was always spottings of people thinking that maybe Ben Needham had been spotted. Maybe there was another late sort of twist in the tail. I remember there was a story some years ago about a digger that was found in some part of the of Cyprus, I think, where he went missing, where they thought that they might be able to find some form of remains. These stories just continue to mystify people. I think it's one of those situations where maybe some families are more better, basically, at galvanising either public opinion or public money in the police, and they can just do it better than anybody else. Let's get a voice note from Paul on Starmer.
I'll say this on behalf of all right-minded people in this country. We have had enough. We cannot survive another 4 years of this bumbling, incompetent, lying Prime Minister and his gang of clowns who are posing as our government. The country can't stand another 4 years of this, Mike. God knows where we will be. Even if reform were to get in at the next election, what are they going to inherit? What is any party going to inherit? The country is on its knees just now, and Starmer seems headlong intent to completely and utterly destroy us.
Paul, it's a great tweet. It's a great message, rather, I should say. Great voice note. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, it is extraordinary, isn't it, how this government seems incapable of seeing what it is that they're doing. And they keep telling us they're putting money back in the pockets of working people. They've got that video they put out yesterday saying our plan is working on stopping the boats, when it clearly isn't. You know, net zero, still something that they're spending a bucket load of money on, when people clearly say that we can't afford it. We're going to talk now to Angela Knight, former head of Energy UK, because we spoke about this earlier on in the week. Ed Miliband poised to ditch targets for heat pumps amid the budget cuts that are facing Rachel Reeves, basically. His net zero ambitions very much up against it. He's been talking to all and sundry about how important it is that Britain remains a leader when it comes to green energy and when it comes to, decarbonising the economy. Well, the economy is going to be worth the square root of sweet FA if they continue down the road they're going. It won't matter whether it's decarbonised or not, because it won't be worth anything. Just before we do that, though, a little breaking news for you. An intruder, aged 23, has been caught trying to enter Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort, looking for the president's teenage granddaughter, Kai, so he could marry her. There's been a few intruders over recent months down at Mar-a-Lago, which of course is the sort of the private home in Florida of President Donald Trump. We'll bring you more news on that as it happens, but we believe the intruder has been apprehended. Let's talk to Angela Knight, former head of Energy UK. Angela, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
There's an awful lot of pressure now, isn't there, on the government's treasury situation and the exchequer, with Rachel Reeves looking for any place that she can find money, literally down the back of the sofa, in the turn-up pockets of her grandfather's trousers and all sorts of things. But it looks as though net zero is under intense pressure now because the money that they want to spend on it simply isn't there.
Yes, I mean, first of all, the Rachel Reeves business, and the economy and all that sort of thing is an absolute mess.
Yeah.
And she hasn't got a grip of it. And there are some adverse consequences, really big consequences that we're all going to feel because she hasn't got a grip.
Yeah.
But if there's one area that really needs to be rethought, it is this whole net zero project. And whenever I say that, you know, people jump on me and they say, oh, well, you don't care about the environment or all that sort of thing,
Right.
which is absolutely not true. The reality of the net zero project is that you have to take these changes, which are huge engineering changes, at a steady and sensible pace. And one of those things which has never been sensible since it was first announced, and I appreciate it was the previous government that did that, was this heat pumps.
Yeah.
Because it's almost as if, you know, a view that a heat pump was a nice, comfortable little thing that you stuck in the corner of your house, and lo and behold, it provided you heat in cold weather, and it was going to be dead cheap and really pretty and all that sort of thing. And the answer is these are big, expensive pieces of kit. They work okay when you've got a well-insulated house, and when you haven't, they don't work okay, and they're expensive to run. And the support has been something like £7,500, £8,000, something like that, grant coming out from the department. If you as an individual, household, you went to put one of these things in. Well, those who put it in have got a very, very mixed response because they found them expensive, they found them noisy, and of course, as I said at the start, only really work if you're insulated properly.
Right.
So if ever there was a target to stop, if ever there was something to pause and just have a think about, this is one of them.
Yeah.
There are many others. To my mind, this is a small one, relatively petty one, but it's enormously important if you're coming to the end of your, you know, your cheap and simple gas boiler. And so, yes, let's get away from some of these senseless targets and let's get back into the practicalities. And as you said at the start, Mike, you know, some of this program of the way that we're setting about changing our forms of electricity production, they're deindustrialization for this country because of the cost, because of the way, because of the fact that they're providing lack of security, and because they haven't built the steady, reliable backup at the same time.
Yeah, exactly right. Because I hear this from people who know more about energy than I do. And in the countries where heat pumps are used, they tend to be a secondary source of heat. They're not a sole source of heat. And you said it right. You know, the reason they are okay if you have a very well insulated house is because they're not very hot. You know, and I've taken loads of calls on this subject because a lot of people, actually more people than I would have thought, have had these things installed because they've fallen for the propaganda. They've gone, okay, let me see if I can do something for the environment. And they said they had to rip out all of their radiators, they had to completely rework the heating system in the house. They had to, you know, dig up half the garden. The things are very noisy at night. They've now removed the right for neighbours to be protected because neighbours have to be at least a metre away from the heat pump. They've taken that away now to try and encourage more people to buy them, and they're just simply not very good. They don't heat the water very well, they don't heat the air very well, and I just think it's a bit of a con, and it always ends up costing people much more money than they thought.
That is correct. And of course, you know, people point to, or government points to other countries and says, well, they've got heat pumps and they're working well. And first of all, you will find that the insulation on the properties is the thing that was done first.
Yeah.
And of course, it's incredibly good. I mean, you know that from just, the Alps, Sweden, you name it, that in those cold countries, they have incredibly good insulation in the first place. Secondly, when you are putting in an installation like this, if you do it into a new house, you can adapt it into that house. But if you're doing it into an existing property, you're sticking it on the front, you're sticking it on the side, you're sticking it on the back, or right now you can stick it right up against your next door neighbour.
I've got another couple of ideas where you could stick it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's too early in the morning for those, Mike. It's too early in the morning. But the third as well is that don't forget that we're paying for electricity in this country between, 2-4 times that they're paying for it in most other countries. So we have produced here a policy which is expensive, doesn't work very well, is disappointing, and hasn't had the sense to link with what needs to be done in the first instance. And if I was going to say to anybody, well, I say it now and here, anybody, if you are going to do something about heating your house, the best thing that you can do is sort out its insulation first. Dead boring, but oh my goodness, does that make a difference to your bill?
Yeah, it really does. Good to talk to you, Angela Knight. Thank you very much indeed, former head of Energy UK. Believe it or not, Keir Starmer's just tweeted this. As a result of our landmark deal with the United States, UK steel won't be subject to additional tariffs. Well, that's not the same as no tariffs, is it? Not the same as zero tariffs. My government will always protect British businesses and British jobs. Really? I see. What else will your government do? Oh, my government will also drive the economy into the sea. Yeah, very right, improper. Coming up, Esther McVeigh is going to be here, the Minister for Common Sense, formerly in the last government. We'll also take more of your calls, more of your views as well. This is Morning Glory. We'll see you after the news.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us because, as you know, that's right there. That's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to very nearly 3 minutes past 8. I'm Mike Graham. We're here, of course, for 4 glorious hours every weekday morning from 6 until 10. You don't want to miss a second of it because it's not just what I have to say about what's going on out there. It's what you have to say. It's the one place and it's the home of common sense where you get your say and we actually care what you think because some of your tweets today and some of your voice notes and some of your messages are absolutely brilliant, as they always are, absolutely getting right to the heart of the matter. Mick says this: why the surprise that the chief of the RAF is not a pilot? They've been appointing police chiefs for years who have never investigated a crime or made an arrest. Front page of the Times this morning. Police cuts mean some crimes must be ignored. This is a message that Keir Starmer's been getting from Britain's most senior police chiefs. They've told him that basically because there's no money, stark choices are going to have to be made, which means the police won't actually be able to do their jobs. We're going to be talking to Robert Jedrick coming up a little bit later on in the show. He's, of course, the Shadow Justice Minister, but also talk to Esther McVeigh, former Minister for Common Sense. She's coming up very, very shortly. The big story this morning still still very much resting on the problem with the military-industrial complex, because despite all the toing and froing between Keir Starmer and the public about whether it's 2.5% of GDP we're going to spend to save the nation from war, whether it's 3%, NATO have come in back at the end of the game and just basically said, well, you're going to have to do at least 3.5%, which of course we don't have. Meanwhile, there are still stark warnings going around about stockpiling all sorts of medical supplies in case there's a nuclear disaster. I mean, it really is quite remarkable what this government is prepared to do to try and convince us all that we have to pay them more in taxes. The race to net zero continues. Meanwhile, headlong, as we just heard from Angela Knight there. Also, the tariff problem in America is looming large as well this morning, as it turns out that the trade deal that Starmer was boasting about just a couple of weeks ago wasn't actually done. There is no trade deal because Donald Trump's put 50% tariffs on British steel. What old Starmer says is that some British steel will not be subject to additional tariffs. He said, my government will always protect British businesses and British jobs. He's making a right hash of it all. He's destroying the economy. He's destroying our reputation. We're a laughing stock. Even the French think it's ridiculous. Sacre bleu, they say. It is like El Dorado here for migrants. They're all coming over, having a great old time. Here's what Keir Starmer said last July before he got in.
We've prepared this party for government. We've prepared all of our departments for government. If we are privileged to come in to serve our country, it will be public service for me, as it always has been, not self-entitlement.
He said that while wearing a suit given to him by Lord Ali and wearing some rose-tinted spectacles given to him by Lord Ali as well. It will be service. That's what he said. He said, prepared for government. Are you seriously taking the mickey? 38,054 is the count so far on the migrant tracker. So far, arrests, 1. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Sue from Essex says, hello, Mike. I have a medical emergency. My head needs to be surgically removed from my hands, which is where it ends up every day. This needs to be done before the doctors go on strike. Please keep up the great work. Why does Yvette Cooper keep repeating the same thing 2 or 3 times in each sentence? And she's reading from notes, for crying out loud, says Herne Bay Mike. And Keith in the Philippines, police underfunded. Maybe from now on they will just send 5 officers instead of 6 to each non-crime hate incident. Well, it's a very good point. Let's get some common sense on board. Esther McVeigh is here. Esther, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
So, here we are. Every week things go from sort of bad to worse, just when you think, well, surely there'll be something to put in the tick that's the right thing box, but there still doesn't seem to be. We've got the tariff problem this morning. We've got the defence problem, where despite spending 2 days convincing us that he might move the defence spending to 3% of GDP, it now turns out NATO was going to tell him 3.5% all along. He's struggling with, as I say, the trade deal that he said he's got with the US. He's struggling with the migrant problem. Yvette Cooper's blaming the weather. I mean, you know, is there anything that they can get right, this government?
Discovered is they loved pontificating when they were in opposition.
Yeah.
They loved throwing stones. They had all the answers, supposedly. The moment they got into power, I actually don't think they enjoy power. They don't like accountability. They haven't got answers, and they haven't prepared. So what you hear is empty words, lots of talk. Richard Dannett said that. It's all talk. There's no resources. And if there's no resources, no way of knowing how you're going to deal with it. It is only talk. And then the other thing I see they do is lots of delay tactics, diversionary tactics, another review, or they've got ambitions, they've got timelines going somewhere into the future. And that, I think, them not like being in power is why they would sooner defer to international law, why they'd sooner defer and go back into the EU. That's because they don't actually want to do things, and they don't want to be held responsible for their actions. And I think you'll see this pattern now playing out. God forbid they'll be in for 4 years. I actually think it'll crumble before then.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And you know, I've been saying this really since last year, because they don't seem to have a clue about, you know, despite what Keir Starmer said there back in July, that was just a couple of days before they actually won the election, in which he said, you know, we are prepared for every part of this government, you know, we are prepared for every single bit of it. You know, every department knows what we're going to do. We're going to hit the ground running. It's all been fully costed. I mean, What we didn't know then, I suppose, was how sort of brazen they were going to be about just telling lies. You know, they put out video after video every day of things that simply aren't true. You know, saying things like, you know, our plan is working. We're putting money back into the pockets of working people. You know, all these cliches that they come out with. Not one of them is true. I've started doing a thing called the Starmer's Lie of the Day.
I also think you saw at the very beginning when they were good at not smashing the gangs, but actually smashing infrastructure that was in place and took a lot of time, effort and negotiation, like the Rwanda bill and the Rwanda scheme. The first thing they did when they came in like an act of political spite was get rid of it, rather than actually say, is there anything we can salvage from it? Is there anything it does? And actually it did act as a deterrent. And then what they've done, they've thrown everything up in the air, and now we see record numbers of immigrants coming through, illegal immigrants coming through, and they haven't a clue what they're going to do. And then they'll come up, like I said, with another diversionary tactic. Let's do an online IT scheme to see, who's here illegally. We know who's here illegally. We've just seen them come over on boats. Stop that. Have that deterrent in there. You also know who's here illegally, and when you do, you don't actually get them out of the country. There are things they can be doing, but they're not. They come up with another harebrained scheme. But like I said, this Rwanda scheme that they got rid of was probably the biggest mistake they've ever done. Actually, in a strong field of mistakes, because actually the prison reforms they've done, letting more prisoners out on the streets more dangerous, and now they look like they might have to cut the prisons bill, and all of the sort of chief police officers are coming forward saying, oh my, you're making everything much more dangerous, and we might now have to choose what we police and what we don't.
Yeah, which I think is a staggering admission from the police. And I mean, I'm sure that, if we were to be completely honest, we could probably find some savings inside the police organisation, which could be in turn provided to frontline policing. But this is partly political, I suppose, from Mark Rowley, because he knows when they get the results that they're not really fighting much crime, they're not solving much crime, he can turn around and say, well, the government hasn't given us any money. But it's starting to look now like the government's kind of financial plans are all in tatters, because we keep reading that, there's all sorts of talks going on between the Home Office and the Treasury this week. They're expected to sort of come to a conclusion this week with exactly what they're going to be able to spend on everything. Rachel Reeves is busy spending 15 billion quid on transport, but only apparently in safe labour areas where they think that they deserve it. Places like Manchester, where there's plenty of decent transportation, where they don't need to be doing it. They should be doing it in places like Sussex, where there's no buses at all for most parts of the day, or there's one bus an hour or something like that, But they don't want to do that. They're only doing it where they think they can get some kind of electoral reward.
Okay, so this is what I'd say, having done spending reviews. Of course, the week before, people will all be sort of hustling to get their budget increase. And what we know now, Rachel Reeves has crashed the budget, so you crashed the economy, so there isn't that much money to go around. But to have in your first year in office all of these arguments bubbling out into the front pages actually shows how big the tensions are within the cabinet. Yes. So we know there isn't much money. We know Rachel Reeves really has done the country down. We know there isn't the money in the budget there. And so you see these inattentions. You'll see Angela Rayner, because she's got to have found... have I just disappeared?
No, you haven't. No, you're still there.
Oh, OK. Something's just happened on my screen there. Sorry. So you've got Angela Rayner. She's got to do 1.5 million homes. She hasn't got the money. She can't do it. You've seen the responsibility there on immigration, on policing. None of them can do it. But like I said, for this to have already bubbled out into the newspapers like it has, says to me there are serious failings and serious weaknesses and serious upsets in their cabinet. But Yvette Cooper also isn't looking into her department, like you said. Where could be the savings? And I asked her a minxy question the other day on the floor of the House, and I said, you see these non-crime hate incidents? We've got a stretched police force. Why don't you start there? Because the clue's in the name. They're called non-crime hate incidents. Stop that. Enable our police to get on with crime. And again, pointing out how stupid and contradictory some of the steps they're taking, letting all those people out of prison is another contradiction in what they need to do. And I think this, as I said, to be bubbling up in their first year in office shows they are a government in disarray.
Yeah, I mean, people talk about a grid, don't they, in Downing Street, where there's a sort of grid of what's happening in any given week. You know, you've got, you know, timetables for things being rolled out. You've got ministers coming in, making their statements in the House, and, you know, somebody's in charge of that. My sense of this grid is that it's literally, you walk into a room and it's just like bits of scrawled up pieces of paper thrown all over the place, and you know, sort of mad crayon everywhere, because it doesn't seem as if they've got a plan for anything. You know, it's all kind of leaping from one, you know, reaction to something to another. You know, one minute it's well, we're going to release a load of prisoners. Next it's we haven't got enough money to fund the police. Next it's we've got a trade deal with India that's come out of nowhere. You know, it's all a bit chaotic, isn't it?
But this shows to me as well the lack of preparation, because you should have a grid and you should know what you're doing, and every department feeds into it. So the grid is there because you've got a whole load of ideas. You're coming forward with properly thought out planned benefit changes. You're coming forward with properly thought out housing or transport structure. So you as a department have got all those plans. Now you have a grid so you're not clashing with one another, so you can announce it, keep the country do it, and then doing it in a systematic way. They haven't got that. So as you rightly say, they're very much being buffeted by what's gone on. So all of a sudden you'll see in the papers, this has gone wrong. So the next day, surprise, surprise, they pulled out of nowhere some sort of plan to deal with it, but they haven't got it, and that's why they're not true. I think earlier in the show, you were talking about how brilliant Caroline Leavitt is in the States, the youngest ever at the age of 27, press office in the White House, and absolutely she is. I say she's part cherub, part Rottweiler. She's fantastic, but it's because she knows where Trump is going. So in a way, a lot easier to answer the questions because she knows this is what we're doing, this is where we're going, this is the plan. Labour haven't got a clue. They couldn't have a press officer doing that because they don't know what they're doing from day to day, and everything contradicts. And that's how you know they're reactive rather than creative. I also heard, which made me smile, Caroline Leavitt said every day before she does a press office, she prays that she's got the strength and the knowledge and she'll have the right words for that press conference. I thought, it's not you who needs to be praying, it's those journalists in the room. They need to divine intervention.
They really do.
She seems to know exactly what she's doing.
But how embarrassing for the BBC to be stripped off, that, to be torn a strip off like that in the White House. You know, I mean, the Telegraph's done it as their main front page story this morning, and sort of given it to Trump as if it was his idea to do it. But I mean, this is how far the BBC have now fallen, that they're being criticised by a top aide to the President of the United States of America for being biased in favour of Hamas. I mean, that is pretty awful, isn't it?
Well, it also says to me how predictable the BBC is, because she also seemed to have pictures and information to illustrate her answer. So she must have known, oh, here we go again. The odds are they're going to ask this question. They're not asking the question of the day. They're asking one which they trot out all the time because they're biased or can't be impartial. So she had that evidence to absolutely batter them down. I think that is poor, that the journalists weren't on top of the game either. I think it told the story either way.
Absolutely right. And one final thing, the Labour Party's also now this week been forced to postpone a £5,000 a head business conference, right? This is coming out of the Financial Times today. Apparently Rachel Reeves and Jonathan Reynolds were going to speak at a Labour Party conference which was supposed to kick-start a new period of growth. It was supposed to invite business leaders from around the country who would be happy to spend that kind of money to sit and listen to them. Apparently there's been such low demand they've had to cancel it. Hardly surprising, really, is it?
Well, there's a couple of things. I don't know if you remember, at the last party conference, they chose a fortune for businesses to go. The tickets were astronomical, and they didn't really show them for that price ticket. They didn't do what they promised they'd do. They never met with them, never spoke with them, and never gave ideas. So straight away, they're thinking, sceptical there, do we want to pay that amount of money to go to an event where actually we don't hear what's going on? I think, but more than that, business has fallen out of love with this Labour Party. They're taxing them to the hilt, which they promised they wouldn't do. There is no growth here. There is no ideas here. They are busy at the moment in their businesses trying to keep them afloat, so they're not going to pay thousands of pounds to go and listen to them. And I wrote an article this week. I thought it was quite an interesting one because I'm getting complaints from lots of businesses. Not only are taxes going up, but they say the HMRC is really coming down like a ton of bricks, like attack dogs, going after them for more and more money. And they said, what don't this government understand? There is no more money to come after us for. And wouldn't it be better if they turned their own attack dogs, as it were, set up a new unit from the HMRC, get the brightest of the best from there, a bit like Doge in America, and understand they need to cut spending, they need to cut waste. It's not about tax and spend, it's about lowering your costs. And I think that's what the businesses would sooner Labour do rather than put on a fake event with warm words going nowhere, which will just end in more tax.
Yeah, absolutely right. Couldn't agree more. Good to talk to you again, Esther, as ever. The former Minister for Common Sense, still making an awful lot of common sense there. We've got lots going on this morning, including things that really, really annoy you. Here's Brian.
Hello, Mike. Brian from Southend. Just a thing that most annoy me. Right, one of the main things is when you're in a supermarket and you're buying all your shopping and all that, you're waiting in the queue for 5 minutes. You know, you put all your stuff on the conveyor belt, it's all going through, etc. And the person in front of you has also done the same. He's waited 5 minutes and all that. He gets to the checkout, all his stuff's been totted up, and then he spends another 5 minutes going through all his pockets or their purses, looking for their bloody money or their card. And the other thing is in petrol garages. When all you do is you want to go, it's a petrol garage for Christ's sake. You go in, you get your petrol and you go in. And then you've got about 3 people in front of you with shopping baskets full of food and all that. Petrol garages are for petrol. Or at least have an own petrol pump where you can pay for it. Bloody hell.
Brian, I feel your pain, man. It's true. There's nothing worse than the person who's not ready to pay. It's a bit like, you know, for me, when you're going through an airport and you get the people standing there waiting to go and put their bag on the belt for the security. And, you know, suddenly they've realised that, they haven't taken anything out of it. So then they start taking things out of it, you know, as they're actually putting it on the belt. And then they walk through and it doesn't work, they have to go back, you know, the belt has to be taken off, you should have taken your shoes off. And do we take our laptops? Yes, you take your laptop out, and they take forever. It is, I mean, I don't get quite as worked up as Brian, but you're quite right. Losing keys, flickering Wi-Fi, bin bag breaks before you take it outside, getting stuck in traffic, all of these things. We want to hear more of those, more of the things that really, really drive you nuts, because here we are. The government obviously does drive us nuts. Who on earth makes these videos? The backing music against the seriousness of the subject is absolutely ridiculous, says Matt in the East Midlands. Honestly, these politicians have no clue what they're doing, and surely to God they must realise that pushing out content like this does the complete opposite to its intended purpose and just infuriates the public even more. Keep up the good work. Frustrated as always. Well, this is the thing. I don't understand why they keep doing it. We've got loads more clips for you. We'll play them all throughout the course of the show. It's 8:21.
Well, there is an argument for that. The 4 top countries that receive the asylum seekers who are being run by these gangs from Afghanistan, Iran, and Iraq and Somalia actually are Italy, Germany, France, and the UK. And as you saw with the riots in Paris over the weekend, as a result of that, you're already seeing in Paris nearly 35% of Paris and 50% in certain of the areas that are controlled by people who are connected to the migrant crisis there.
Yeah.
So they have a massive problem, and it's in their interest to shove it to Britain.
Absolutely.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8:25. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course, when Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here. Cliff says this with regard to digital ID to check when you leave the country. I went to South Africa in 1981. On arrival, they stuck a barcode in my passport, scanned it, and when I left, they scanned it again, and so knew I had left. Just give people arriving in the UK a barcode. Well, you can certainly do that. We had a thing on Plank of the Week the other day about a woman who actually tattooed a barcode onto her arm so that every time she bought a can of Red Bull, she could just charge it to her barcode on her arm. Very weird, but you could. I'm not saying you should tattoo migrants coming in. Obviously, that would be wrong. But some people have better ideas than that. Let's get a voice note from Mark on cash.
Morning, Mike. It's Mark from Derby here. Just getting a bit annoyed about this cash thing. Can I just say the best thing that could happen to this country is if we went cashless. All these people who get paid cash in hand and don't pay their taxes, all these dodgy places where people are washing your cars or doing all these other things, all these sort of like places that say cash, it's because they're trying to dodge tax. And also, can I just say, having worked in retail for 30 years, there has been a procedure in retail for all that time about when your tills go down so you can still take people's money. So all this thing about, well, we can't take people's money, so we need cash, that's absolute rubbish.
Yeah, I think you're a bit confused, Mark. It's on one hand, if nobody has any cash and the tills go down, you say they can still take cash. Well, they can't take cash if nobody's got any, can they? So I'm afraid you've slightly tripped yourself up there, but thank you. Very enthusiastic. Well said. I don't think it's a good idea to get rid of cash altogether. I know that there are some people who would like to do that, but I don't think that is the way forward. Let's talk to Ryan Sabey, Deputy Political Editor at The Sun, who's here because The Sun, big column today in The Sun. It's all about J.K. Rowling and the way that some people are reacting to the way that she has been defending women's rights. Brilliantly, by the way. Julie Bindel has written a piece today. It's on page 12 of the paper, and it says, it's on page 10 actually, how dare Jade Thirlwall have a go at J.K. Rowling? It's thanks to women like her that Jade is even on stage at all. And this is the former Little Mix singer, of course, who's the latest in a long line of sort of trendies who are basically taking the view that J.K. Rowling is some horrible misogynist, some horrible ghastly woman who's so rich that she doesn't care about the trans people of this country. Very good morning to you, Ryan.
Good morning, Mike.
It's a great piece, this, isn't it? Because there is a sense that J.K. Rowling is kind of under attack from an awful lot of quarters of this country. And obviously, they're very small quarters in a way, and these celebs who kind of jump on the bandwagon, we could rather do without, couldn't we?
Yeah, I think you look at J.K. Rowling and the amount of people who've attacked her over the years, and many of them, she was the one who actually made their career. You can start with the likes of those Harry Potter stars, those 3 main stars, and I think they've certainly distanced themselves from J.K. Rowling. And Julie Bindel on our page 10 today makes exactly the same point. You've got Little Mix singer Jade Thirlwall, who herself, you know, as she says, has been enriched by, you know, all this this power or what have you. And she's the one who's come out fighting against J.K. Rowling, and actually went to such an extent that she appeared on stage and had a real go at her using, you know, expletive after expletive. So I think Julie Bindel is right that a lot of people have, including Jay Thirlwell, have a lot of things to thank J.K. Rowling for.
Absolutely right. And she says this: I've been an active feminist for more than 40 years, campaigning against issues such as rape, domestic violence, the harms of prostitution and the murder of women. And I can tell you that Rowling has done more to support women who are victims of this horrendous abuse than anyone I can think of in all these decades. So she should actually be being treated as a hero by these women instead of being castigated for being anti-trans, shouldn't she?
Yeah, and also I think Julie Bindel makes the good point. Is it Jay Thirlwell in this moment? Is she just? Is it? She actually talks about a pathetic attempt to please the riled up crowds. Jay Thirlwell is playing to maybe a crowd that will hang off every single word that she says. They may be reading the Twitter sphere and all that, and you just wonder whether they all feeds into that, and it's just a little bit too easy for pop stars to feed into that. But I think the big point is that J.K. Rowling is a lot of these stars. They owe a lot to her. And as well as I mentioned, those Harry Potter stars, from the outset.
Right. Well, I mean, the Harry Potter stars are the worst of all of them, aren't they? Because if it wasn't for J.K. Rowling, they wouldn't have a career. I mean, they were picked out of obscurity and plucked when they were children, basically, to appear in one of the most successful TV and movie franchises of all time. And yet here they are sort of being disrespectful to her and calling her all sorts of horrible names and almost as though, they've forgotten exactly what she did for them.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, they were literally just like those stars that we saw this week who got going onto the Harry Potter TV show. These young stars, Daniel Radcliffe, etc., Rupert Grint, they all came from nowhere. The best part of 25 years ago. And I think the thing is with those stars, it's actually got quite nasty between sort of Daniel Radcliffe and J.K. Rowling. Perhaps they should just sort of take stock for a moment and realise what J.K. Rowling's actually done for them.
Yeah, absolutely right. Just while we've got you on, let's just run past the steel tariff story on the front pages today. Suggestions that Starmer and Trump and the trade deal is not quite what it was. I mean, Keir Starmer said last month, basically, that the steel tariffs were going to disappear. There were going to be zero tariffs on British steel. Trump last night said we're going to put 50% tariffs on. At the moment, they're now still negotiating. So, I mean, I guess the question is, when is a trade deal not a trade deal? The trade deal clearly hasn't been done.
Yeah, no, exactly. It seems like there may be a short reprieve for the sector when those rates may come down a little bit. But this was the point that myself and other journalists were pressing Downing Street on yesterday. This deal, there's a lot of fanfare made about this deal. Yeah. Keir Starmer talked, it was a landmark deal, but it didn't seem that they actually put pen to paper.
Right.
So I think that's where the sort of confusion is laid, that there's been a lot of talking this up. But actually, when it comes down to it, these sectors aren't much better until it actually gets signed off. These sectors aren't much better, despite all the hurrah and all the fanfare that we saw in Washington just a few weeks ago.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it was only, last week that he put out a great big sort of, rah-rah, we've done deals with the three biggest organisations in the world, the European Union, the United States of America and India. Well, it looks very much as though the EU deal isn't really done completely yet either, and the US deal certainly isn't done completely, so it may well be that he's got one deal from India.
Yeah, no, exactly. So you may have that on one hand, but and then with the EU stuff, a lot of it with that deal, whether it is the youth mobility scheme, seems to be parked. A lot of that stuff seems to be, there may be some sort of outline, but actually a lot of that stuff was sorted out in the months and weeks ahead. And I think the trouble with the US deal is that you've got steel tariffs on one hand, and I think you've got a lot of other sectors that we obviously could charge the US tariffs on. That all this needs to be tied up together. So there's no deal sorted until the whole deal is sorted. I think we're in that kind of precarious moment. And I think the trouble is, for the steel sector, it's just that unease and that uncertainty of what's gonna happen to that sector and how they're going to be impacted.
Yeah, absolutely right. Ryan, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Ryan Sabey, Deputy Political Editor at The Sun. Should we just remind ourselves, by the way, of when the deal supposedly was done and when Donald Trump and Keir Starmer were talking on the phone?
I'd like to introduce him now to say a few words. Mr. Prime Minister, please take it away.
Thank you, Mr. President, Donald. And this is a really fantastic, historic day in which we can announce this deal between our two great countries.
Yeah, it's not really an historic day, is it? Because you can't really announce an historic deal between our two great countries, Donald, can you really? Because there isn't one, as he's just proven. Let's get a new voice note from Paula on number 10.
Morning, Mike. It's Paula from Liverpool. Great show. Who are the government making these videos for that you keep showing? If you didn't show them or play them, I'd never ever see them. They're just a waste of money. They're just to gaslight people. Who even believes them? What is the point of them? How much are they costing? And why are they doing it? What a waste of money. Another waste of money. Thanks, Mike.
Paul, you're absolutely right. It's a complete waste of money. I mean, they must have an entire department of people. They've dragged up some bloke from the in-betweeners, it sounds like, or some bloke who picks up at a bus stop to narrate this one. This is number 10's latest video on the small boats.
Want to know how we're controlling our borders? Then watch this. We're working with our international allies to smash people smuggling gangs for good. We're giving law enforcement new powers to criminalise those who endanger their lives at sea, and making sure every business carries out right-to-work checks, ending the exploitation of illegal labour. Our plan is working. Since July, we have returned nearly 30,000 people with no right to be here. Hundreds of boats and engines have been seized, and illegal working rates are up by 40%.
Yeah, that's what it says here. Yeah, can I have that soy latte now, please, that you promised me? Thanks very much indeed. It's 8:35.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 8:37. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. I've got this from Mike, who says, I'm always using cash when the restaurant says we don't take it. I say that's all I've got. Funny, they always take it. And Gary says from Paul Tree, Trump has probably ripped up any deal Starmer made because Starmer has taken us back into the EU. That may well be true. Let's get a new voice note from Andrew.
Morning, Mike. Great show as ever. In fact, gets better and better. Andrew here from Weymouth in Dorset. These people are a little bit like the Biden administration. They pour out these platitudes and say, look, I'm telling you, we are doing well because we say so. But yet everybody just stands there and shakes their head and says, what on earth are you people talking about? This is all smoke and mirrors. The latest thing that Starmer's doing with defence, what, we're now at war footing? Who are we at war with? This is... I'm being told to pipe down now by my wife. I mean, I am just... All of us are just getting really frustrated with this government. I've had enough with the lies, but there's nothing we can do about it.
Listen, Andrew, it's not a good Wednesday unless you're getting told to pipe down by the missus. I tell you what, Andrew there, absolutely frustrated, as we all are. Because, yeah, exactly, who are we at war with? I mean, Delta says this. I thought if any country attacked a member state of countries in NATO, then those countries would side with that country. Why is Starmer scaremongering us? It's a very good question, isn't it? Let's talk to Baroness Claire Fox, independent peer, director, of course, of the Academy of Ideas. Very sensible woman. Baroness Claire, very good morning to you.
Hi, Mike. Good to be with you.
Good to see you. I mean, gaslighting the public has reached new levels, I think, in this government. But while we're sort of laughing at it and we're treating them with scant regard, I'm sure I wanted to talk to you about this morning because I know you'll have a view on this blasphemy law that seems to have crept into to our nation by the back door. Somebody being prosecuted because apparently, and I could barely believe my ears when I heard the judge in this blasphemy case saying that the reason that they had to prosecute this man from Turkey, who has been a campaigner against the Islamification of Turkey for years and years and years, is because of the reaction that it caused. Because somebody decided to try and stab him with a knife. He must have been offensive. It was extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean, two things. First of all, you know, we spent years, didn't we, that, you know, young girl got a short skirt on, got a low-cut top on, and we used to campaign vigorously to say that anyone who said she was bringing it on herself, right, that was victim shaming, victim blaming, and so it was. Right, the person who is responsible for the crime is the person who committed the crime, not the victim. And now, as you say, we have a judge, and I might be having to pipe down myself here. We have a judge who says, well, we know that it was an offensive act. We know that it was going to cause problems because he was stabbed by two passers-by. Proof, therefore, that he was the criminal. Yeah. And we've got to be very careful about what's happening here because this is indeed a racially aggravated public order offence. That means that we're repurposing public order crimes in relation to blasphemy. I mean, that's the only way that you can understand it. And your last two voicemails and your question to me is about gaslighting. Yeah. Because what I can't stand is that even raising this as an issue, saying, I think that this could be blasphemy laws by the back door. Can you answer, minister, or what have you? And they look you in the eye and they say, nothing to see here. Right. What are you talking about? And that's why the nation is tearing its hair out, because there's not even an acknowledgement of what the concerns are. And of course we should be worried when we get to a situation in a pluralist, secular society that we are told that if you do something that upsets members of a particular religion, it can mean that you are going to be arrested by the police and charged by the CPS. That, of course, means that there is a chilling impact of blasphemy, that you think, oh, my God, I can't say anything about that in case it's interpreted as an attack on religion. And this was an explicit attack on Islam, the religion, but the judge conflated that religion with the effect it might have on some members of the religion, i.e. Muslims. Yeah. And the irony there is that most of the time, I would say that that is an insult to Muslims, because some Muslims, most Muslims in many instances, would have their religion attacked and they might angrily argue back, but they're not going to go around stabbing you, right? This is insulting. I mean, you say, oh, if I show this cartoon of the Prophet Muhammad, that's going to lead to violent riots and potentially people getting decapitated and potentially lead to, you know, all this violence. No, not necessarily. It means that some of the more radical elements, adherents of a religion, might or might not interpret that in such a way and then behave criminally. Yeah. But that is not a reason why you should ever ring fence off a religion and say you can't criticize it, ridicule it, laugh at it, make fun of it. That's the basis on which a secular society operates, that you give freedom of religion, you can practice your religion as you want, and the deal is that we can tolerate that religion and its practices, but we're not going to endorse and hug it and protect it.
No, exactly right. I mean, because the criminal event that happened that day was not Hamid Koskan, you know, burning a copy of the Quran. It was the two guys that came out and attacked him for it. They were the criminals, you know, and yet one of them, apparently, who can't be named, who tried to stab him, apparently is not going to be tried for at least a couple of years. You know, that case has been sort of put on the back burner. He's suddenly put through the courts, and I know that people will say, well, it's a relatively minor offence, it's a relatively minor charge. But the important bit is, as you say, is who they're claiming is in the wrong here. You know, and the people in the wrong are not necessarily the ones who reacted. I mean, if I went outside and saw somebody burning a Bible and decided to go and beat them up, I bet you any money the police would arrest me.
And by the way, they should, because, you know, you might be upset seeing somebody burning a Bible, and I'm sure that you or I and none of us are advocating mass Quran burning or mass Bible burning, right?
Right.
But the point about it is that this is a religion, that is an idea, a set of beliefs. And in a free society, you should be free to criticise, lampoon and attack a religious belief.
Definitely.
It's not the same as attacking the adherents of that belief. That is different. And the person who was attacked here, the person who, I mean, we had footage of a man wielding a very large knife, stabbing hysterically and saying, that's my religion, how dare you? Stabbing, spitting, being vile and abusive. And then, as the gentleman who burnt the Quran was lying on the ground, somebody runs over him on the bike, right, kicks him, right? So I think that this is an example of where the law has interfered in a way that it should never have done.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Front pages are full of the police saying, if you don't pay us more, we're going to have to choose which crimes we prosecute. And you think, you're already doing that, mate. And it's not to do with money. It's not to do with resources. The police at the moment and the criminal justice system is unduly biasing its attacks and spending a lot more time than it ought to policing our views, our opinions on things that they say are offensive. And in this instance, what they're saying about this burning of the Quran was it was offensive.
And that's the trouble, because it is really dangerous, because once you've got the state telling you what is offensive. You might remember back in about a year or more ago, Merseyside Police actually stood outside a poster that they'd commissioned in which it said, you know, being offensive is an offence. And then it turned out they were wrong about that, and they had to take the poster down, because being offensive is not an offence, and it never should be. And it might be unpleasant, and you might not like people doing it, but, you know, you can't start policing it on the basis that it's, you know, if you've taken offence, then I must be somehow guilty of something.
But I was on another channel yesterday, which we won't mention, and I was up against a Labour MP, and her response in relation to this blasphemy debate, such as it was a debate, was, apart from the fact that, you know, it had already been implied that I was a far-right Trumpian supporter, was in my constituency, 15% of the people in that constituency are Muslims, and you don't know the kind of fear that they live under. So she was the person who conflated this one act outside the Turkish consulate, you know, not in her constituency, and say, well, what about the 15% of Muslims in my constituency who will be fearful because they will have seen that happen? And in that way, you just, and this is the gaslighting bit. So she said, so we've got to be careful that we protect them from people who are trying to stir up any kind of hatred against them. And I thought the only person who has conflated this burning of the Quran with hatred of your constituent is you, right? And that's what blasphemy does. It gives a blanket protection to anything in relation to the religion of Islam, and conflates it with every Muslim who lives in the country and says we're only doing that to protect their feelings and their sensitivities, because otherwise they will feel that their religion is being insulted. That's what blasphemy law is. She then said, how ridiculous to call it a blasphemy law. That's typical, you know, that's the kind of people who are stirring things up, right? And so consequently, it has a chilling effect, not just on the whether you burn a Quran, but whether you talk about burning a Quran, and whether you talk about the dangers of blasphemy laws by the back door.
Yeah, totally and absolutely right. And what about this piece of the Telegraph this morning, which will also have a sort of chilling, I would think, effect on the conversations around this kind of attitude, right? It's a Matt Goodwin study that's been done in which it says white British people will become a minority of the population within the next 40 years. A study of migration, birth and death rates up to the end of the 21st century predict that white Britons will decline from 73% of the population to 57% by 2050, and quite a lot of that has to do with factual information about the numbers of children that certain types of different families in this country have.
Yeah, so first of all, I haven't read the study, and I am slightly wary that we don't overly scaremonger about, these kind of issues, but I do think they should be debated and discussed.
But they shouldn't be buried, should they? I mean, that's the point. You can be wary, and I think that's right, and cautious and all of that. But unfortunately, the establishment over the years has run 100 miles away from all of this stuff and not wanted to talk about it.
Exactly. And the other thing is, I don't actually think, I don't think the major figure there is necessarily skin colour or ethnicity as it goes, because as it happens, there's huge numbers of people who for many generations have lived here who might well be multi-ethnic in their origins and not necessarily have white skin colour. The problem is, as you've discussed perfectly well, not just perfectly well, brilliantly on the show for some time, is that what we've got at the moment is the mass movement of people into the UK who are not integrated into the UK. And so what you then have is that sense of living in, your community, and I think even Lisa Nandy admitted this, but you're living in your community and you feel as though, and to quote, would you believe it, Keir Starmer, you can feel like a stranger in your own land because everything feels as though it's, that it's not that people are coming to the UK and joining in part of a vibrant society, but that actually people are living parallel lives, very distinct and different lives, and that actually you are made to feel as though you are the one who is not welcome. And if you raise some of these issues, I think Matt Goodwin, by the way, it's right to look at the figures, to look at the stats, to have the conversation. I think that's the way that you clarify what the real issues are in a debate. You have the debate. As soon as somebody says you can't have that debate, then that's when actually the figures, you can't ever drill down and really scrutinise them.
No, exactly right. We've got to run. Great to talk to you, Baroness Claire Fox, as ever, making perfect sense, independent peer and director of the Academy of Ideas. 3 things that annoy me, says Alan in Middlesbrough. Discourteous drivers not acknowledging you when you give them right of way. Prats that stand inches away from airport baggage carousels, blocking you from collecting your luggage when it arrives. That's a good one. And the phrase, working people. One from Peter in Norwich. Great show. The small thing that annoys me is a bath towel that doesn't dry you but just pushes the water about. Just so annoying. I know what you mean. Jane, finally, as Yvette Cooper is a weather expert, perhaps she should resign from the Home Office and work at the Met Office instead. Yeah, maybe she should. I don't think she's any better at that, though. It's 8:51.
This is an issue where the Prime Minister and his cabinet, his senior politicians, should be talking to the people. We should be having a discussion about this, not some sort of petulant, we don't have blasphemy laws, and then just walking off.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pathetic. It's pathetic.
Well, he lacks the words to speak to people in difficult times, I think. Do you remember after the Southport killings, he turned up to lay a wreath, which was a responsible thing for him to do. But then when those people were sort of protesting on the margin of that and saying, what are you going to do about it, he just walked off. He didn't have the words to talk to them.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8:55. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, all the way through until 10 o'clock. Danny from the Wirral says something that really annoys me is people parking in child spaces, but also people who park in the drop-off point outside the market you go and do your weekly shopping. You come out 20 minutes later, half an hour later, and they still parked in the pickup space, being lazy. Move your car, park it in the space and walk. You complete plonkers. And Mark in Sussex says the same. Following on from Brian in Southend on petrol stations, what really winds me up is people who park on the pump but don't buy fuel. Most garages have some parking which can be used. Let's get a voice note from Fee.
Good morning, Mike. Fee from Berkshire here. Regarding the water companies needing an overhaul, I received a bill yesterday for usage from the 17th to the 22nd of April this year. £4,620. I've contacted them. I've assured them I haven't had a swimming pool fitted in the back garden, or that my housemate has drunk 4,590,000 cups of tea during that time. There's only 2 people live in this house. I was actually on holiday from the 18th to 25th of April. So clearly there's been a mistake. They definitely need an overhaul. Great show as always, Mike. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks very much indeed, Fee. Yeah, they definitely need an overhaul because they are trying it on with so many people. So many people have got stories about water companies and now ridiculous bills. But we'll come back to that, though, because right now we want to talk to Rebecca Ryan, Campaign Director for Defund the BBC. Rebecca, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
It comes to something, doesn't it, when the office of the President of the United States, in the guise of Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, actually attacks the BBC for being pro-Hamas. Have a look at this.
The administration is aware of those reports, and we are currently looking into the veracity of them because, unfortunately, unlike some in the media, we don't take the word of Hamas with total truth. We like to look into it when they speak, unlike the BBC, who had multiple headlines. They wrote, Israeli tank kills 26, Israeli tank kills 21, Israeli gunfire kills 31, Red Cross says 21 people were killed in an aid incident, and then, oh wait, they had to correct and take down their entire story, saying we reviewed the footage and couldn't find any evidence of anything. Oh. Okay, so we're going to look into reports before we confirm them from this podium or before we take action, and I suggest that journalists who actually care about truth do the same to reduce the amount of misinformation that's going around the globe on this front.
So, I mean, that's the British Broadcasting Corporation, and that's their reputation now, completely trashed.
Absolutely, and it's actually really quite beautiful to see that from the White House really calling finally on this huge global scale, calling out the BBC. You know, the thing is that's really frustrating about the BBC is they have a charter, which is the Royal Charter, which is what entitles them to tax us for watching any live broadcast TV from anywhere in the world. And in order for them to do that, they have to deliver journalistic excellence. And there they are being called out by the White House for exactly the awful quality of journalism. Right. Typically see from the BBC, you know, day in, day out. And this is what the British people are getting so frustrated about, and why poll after poll shows 2/3 of Brits want to get rid of the licence fee. And here you have Tim Davie, don't we now, asking for more money.
Yeah, well, he says because they've had to make more cuts, they suddenly need more money. I'm not quite sure how you make that argument unless you've gone completely insane. You know, the point about making the cuts is that provides you with more money from the money you've already got, doesn't it?
Exactly, and they need to. If they still haven't got enough money, then they need to cut some more. Because the thing is, 500,000 households in the UK per year, pretty much since Defund the BBC launched in 2020, have been deciding they don't want to pay for the TV licence anymore. And as the younger generations come up and set up their own households, they're not paying for the TV licence because they don't watch any live broadcast TV. And the people that do typically pay for the TV licence are the older generations, and they're the ones that are being ignored and lectured and patronised to and called old racists during the Brexit debate years. And they're the ones that are then going to be charged even more money if Tim Davie gets his way.
Exactly right. And the fee rose to £174.50 in April. I mean, that's not a small amount of money anymore. You know, people used to say, oh, you know, come on, it's only worth about £10 a month or £12 a month or something. There's a lot more than that now, and you could get other services for that same money.
You could get plenty of services for way less than that, absolutely. That's the thing, during the COVID years, people realised, you know, that you can watch on-demand content without having a TV licence. And you don't, as long as you're watching on-demand or catch-up content that isn't BBC iPlayer, you don't actually need a TV licence. And the more people are clocking onto this, the more people are their TV licenses, despite the BBC's continued sort of bullying letters. People are sort of thinking, well, you know, sod it, I don't want to pay for this anymore. Yeah. I'm death of this poor quality journalism and constant lecturing.
Yeah, it is really absolutely and utterly uninspiring. But at least Gary Lineker's gone. I suppose there's one good thing since you and I last spoke.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it is good to see him go, but at the same time, he was our best poster boy because every time he said anything on Twitter, you know, more people would sign up to defund the BBC. So, but absolutely, it was a shocking waste of licence fee payers' money to keep that guy extremely well funded and then going out and, you know, launching all these political tirades on Twitter. So, you know, it is right that he's gone and good that he's gone.
Yes, I agree. Couldn't agree more. Good to talk to you. Rebecca Ryan, Campaign Director of Defund the BBC. Mike, about the bins, says Diane in Southend-on-Sea. Every morning I clear my garden of the wrappers, toys and nappies left there by the foxes overnight. Following the point made by the Scottish gentleman, these items must be garden waste and I can put them in my garden waste bin, surely. Yeah, well, good luck with that. If you do, I presume the nutters will turn up and say the Jobsworths will go, oh no, we can't take that. That didn't come from the garden. Well, maybe it did. Coming up in the next hour, Reem Ibrahim's here. Richard Fuller, Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury as well. There's no money left. What are we going to do now? We'll come back after the news.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, well, say now, well, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to very nearly 5 minutes past 9. We are here, ladies and gentlemen. It's Wednesday, the 4th of June. We've been here since 6 o'clock, so if you've missed any of it, you have missed an absolute rip snorter of a programme, because we've been talking about a great many things, including the fact that the police are saying they're running out of money, so they might have to ignore some crimes. They're not very happy with the settlement that they're going to get from the Treasury. The Home Office say they just simply haven't got enough money to carry out normal policing activities. But a lot of people have said they're already not carrying out normal policing activities. So where does this leave us? As they're about to release a load of dangerous criminals back into society, the police can't arrest them, the police can't investigate crimes. It's not a good thing. We've also been talking about the state of play vis-à-vis the Strategic Defence Review, because it turns out that despite Keir Starmer making a big song and dance about whether it's 2.5% of GDP and whether it's 3% of GDP, whether it's 4 submarines they're building or 5 or 1 or none, all of that pales into insignificance now that NATO have said, actually, Sir Keir Starmer, you'll do what we say, and that's 3.5% of your GDP, and you'll be spending that after we tell you to do it in a couple of weeks at the NATO summit. Also, we're going to be talking about the BBC finally being slated, not just by defund the BBC or by us, but now by the White House in America for being too pro-Hamas. Meanwhile, Yvette Cooper says it's good weather that's to blame for all the migrants coming across to this country, and as long as the good weather continues, we won't be able to stop them. For heaven's sake, we've also been asking you for things that annoy you, and here's some of the stuff you've been telling us.
I tell you what really annoys me and upsets me first thing in the morning while I'm trying to eat my bacon sandwich, and then you start talking about Ed Miliband, honestly enough to put anyone off their food.
One of the biggest bugbears, I think, is this lying, useless government.
One thing that really annoys me is people walking in the middle of the aisle in the supermarket.
Petrol garages are for petrol, or at least have an own petrol pump where you can pay for it. Bloody hell!
Absolutely brilliant. Richard Fuller's here, Shadow Chief Secretary of the Treasury. Also, Reem Ibrahim's here as well from the IEA. We'll get her view on all of this stuff that's going on. It is quite remarkable how useless this government has become. With every single growing day, they seem to get worse and worse and worse and worse. We'll be talking about all of that. Plus, we'll be taking loads of your calls and getting all your views as well, because we care what you think. It's the only place where you can get your views heard. It's 7 minutes past 9. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Also, the cherry on the cake, I think, today is that Keir Starmer has appointed a brand new chief of the RAF who can't fly a plane. Now, some of you are saying, what difference does that make? Well, it does make a difference. Air Chief Marshal Sir Richard Knighton is the next chief, I think, of the RAF. And apparently, he's now going to be head of the armed forces. But they've appointed a new head of the RAF who can't fly a plane. Never mind. The cash problem is caused partly by a lack of banks, says Alison in Richmond. We were bemoaning the card-only notice in a cafe recently, and the owner said that he was pro-cash, but all the banks have closed. This gives them security risk, added to the frustration of having to travel a long way to deposit their takings. I think that's a very good point. Speaking of cash, speaking of money, let's talk to the Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury. He's Richard Fuller, MP, joins me now. Richard, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Very interesting set of statistics this morning. We've got Rachel Reeves spending £15 billion on transport in various parts of the country. Mostly, it seems to be rather conveniently in sort of Labour heartlands like Manchester and Bury and the East Midlands and the West Midlands and all of that. Meanwhile, we've got the police saying there isn't enough money to carry out our normal duties, and in fact we'll have to start ignoring some crime. Meanwhile, the Defence Review says that we might be spending 3%. Now NATO have said you're going to have to spend 3.5%. We don't seem to have any kind of cogent policy on the exchequer right now.
No, you're quite right, Mike. The Chancellor is all over the place. Here she is, barely a week away from setting spending plans for the next 3 years, and she's got Chief Constable after Chief Constable now saying, hold on a minute, that isn't going to work. So what's she going to do? She's decided to rush up and make some more paper promises of projects that might come about, may not come about. But, you know, for the people going to work today, what they will care about is, do they feel secure when they're in their communities at home? Do they feel that they've got access to healthcare? And importantly, do they think now that the Chancellor is just storing up more problems that come the autumn she's going to say, oh, I'm really sorry, I've got to raise your taxes yet again?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, we're told that this week is quite a crucial week for the Treasury, because this is the week where supposedly every department gets its kind of allocation of money. But frankly speaking, when we know that they borrowed 20 billion in April just to kind of keep things going and just to keep things ticking along, I mean, there isn't any money really, is there?
Well, you're quite right, and they're not even factoring in this sort of moving target of how much money they're going to spend on defence of the realm. Labour ministers like to, and all politicians like to say, defence of the realm is the number one thing of politicians to do. But, the government, this Labour government, originally said they were only going to spend 2%. Then they said it's 2.5%. Then they said they might get around to 3%. Now it's 3.5%. Good heavens, Mike, it's just Monday that they provided this strategic review trying to set out what we're going to spend on defence. And they still don't know, we still don't know, how much money are they going to spend on defence. And once the government's made that decision, what's that going to mean in terms of squeeze on other public expenditures? Is there going to be more pressure on police funding? Or is there going to be more taxes for people going out to work today, trying to earn a living for their family?
And is it government?
It's a mess.
It's government by slogan as well, Richard, isn't it? Because every single day there's a new video that comes out from number 10 Downing Street with more kind of, meaningless words on it. Like, for example, the one we saw yesterday about how, our plan is working to stop the boats. Well, it's clearly not working. You can have all sorts of arguments around that, but don't tell us that it's working when it isn't. Don't tell us you're putting money in our pockets when you're not doing it. Don't tell us that, NHS waiting lists are coming down when they're not. I think people are getting sick to death of the lies. And Chris Philp this week actually accused the Prime Minister of dishonesty, which I think is a pretty low mark for a Prime Minister of Great Britain.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, and also, in the general election, Mike, we go around and the public, talking to me, trying to get re-elected, were saying, people say a lot of things, but we don't see the change happening. So just stop with the slogans, stop with the rushed answers. And that's why with Kemi Badenoch, I mean, it is hard for the Conservative Party right now because this Labour government is so useless. But with Kemi Badenoch, we really want to make sure that we think through proper solutions that are going to work, that we get not only the right policies in place, but then we know that we can implement them. Because exactly the point you're making, what people don't want is to have a government of slogans. They want to have a government that's actually taking actions and can demonstrate that those actions will have results and that they've got the skills in the people they're putting in place to deliver on that. And that's what we're working on, Mike.
And look at the trade situation right now, because we found out overnight that actually, far from having a trade deal done with the United States, there is very much not a trade deal done with the United States. Donald Trump came out last night and said he's putting steel tariffs up to 50%. He's giving Britain a slight reprieve while we negotiate. But Starmer told us 2 weeks ago that the deal was done. The deal clearly isn't done.
Well, it isn't. It is the steel industry boss that you had on, the guy who represents the steel sector, said there's so much uncertainty. There's no security for the British steel industry in terms of the ability for it to export to the US. The tariffs on steel are already much higher than they were this time last year, and we know that with this Prime Minister, he is just a poor negotiator. He caves into the public sector unions, giving them pay rises. We told them, the Conservatives told them, if you do that without any productivity gains, they will come back for more. You're showing that you are weak. And guess what? 6 months later, the trade unions are back asking for more. On the trade deals, he gives and he gives and he gives. We get very little in return. He tries to sell the fact that tariffs are higher as some sort of win for Britain. That isn't a win for Britain. That means it's going to be harder for us to export. And then don't even think about Labour's approach on the boats crossing the Channel. I mean, here we have French officials trying to tell us they can do nothing about stopping the boats, sitting there and standing there on the beach while we give them millions of pounds. And at the same time, the French are saying to the Prime Minister, give us all access to fishing, and the Prime Minister is doing nothing. Well, why don't we pause the discussions on fishing rights until we get action from France on stopping the boats?
Sounds like a very sensible idea. They're always bound to ignore it. Richard, thank you very much indeed. Richard Fuller, the Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury. Reem Ibrahim is here, I'm delighted to say, Communications Manager at IA. Hello, Reem.
Good morning, how are you?
Good morning, very well indeed. It's all going to hell in a handcart, though, as they say. I mean, every week we come in and we think, well, maybe they're going to get something right. This government seems to be getting it all wrong at the moment. The trade deal with the US doesn't seem to have been done. The deal for our new defence review seems to be all over the place. They don't know how many submarines they want to build. They don't know how much they cost. They don't know how much money they're going to put in. They don't know where they're going to get the money from. I mean, it's amazing, isn't it?
There's a lot going on. I mean, on the defence spending, there was a really great cartoon in the Telegraph today, or was it yesterday, where they were saying, well, we're going to have all these new submarines, but, if they come over and, Russia try and invade us on boats, we won't be able to defend ourselves. No. So it's sort of quite farcical, actually, the amount of money that we're spending. And I think, defence spending is incredibly complex. I think it's one of the areas of government that we absolutely do need to be spending more money. But the question is, where is that money being spent, and is it being spent in the most efficient ways? I actually think what Russia-Ukraine has proven to us is that despite all of the cyber attacks and various new ways that war is being fought, actually when it comes down to it, war is often fought with boots on the ground, and we need to be building up our capacity in that area. Yeah, absolutely. But they don't, again, seem to have a clue. On the one hand, they're warning us that we should have a war footing going on. We should all be frightened that Russia's attacking us every day, as John Healey said. We should all be preparing. I mean, the front page of the Eye today has got people saying, we must stockpile medical equipment and medical supplies in case of a nuclear attack. I mean, it's quite scaremongery, and I think totally unnecessary, isn't it? I think a lot of it is unnecessary, and actually this is partly why I was against the nationalisation of Scunthorpe steel mill, because a lot of people were saying, well, it's strategically important, we absolutely do need those, we need a domestic supply of steel, but in reality, if we were to go to war tomorrow, we would not be getting our steel from Scunthorpe. No. We would be getting our steel from other steel-producing nations across the world. It's not just China, although they are the largest. We absolutely can get steel from other countries, and that's why free trade is so important. So obviously everything that's going on with Trump and the steel tariffs, and potentially removing some of those steel and aluminium tariffs with the US trade deal, but of course hasn't been ratified, hasn't been implemented. Hasn't even been signed. Hasn't even been signed. Apparently Parliament haven't seen it either. So I think that the slowness, the general slowness for these policy changes are part of the reason why that's happening. I mean, the US-UK trade deal is absolutely a really fantastic deal. It's not very comprehensive. There is so much more room to grow. But it's not really a deal, though, is it? I mean, it's an idea of a deal, but it's not quite a deal. I mean, there's an idea, because I'm told, in fact, it was Andrew Griffiths yesterday who showed me a letter that he's written to his counterpart in the Ministry of Trade, saying, what is the point of this deal? Is there a deal? Can you please explain what it is? Because car manufacturers in Britain are still paying a tariff to send their cars to America. Steel manufacturers have pretty much given up sending steel because they don't know what the tariff is. So there is no trade. Yeah, well, really. we don't really export very much steel to the US anyway, so to be quite frank, the impact on the economy is going to be so negligible. Oxford Economics, after the deal was announced, didn't upgrade their growth forecast, said, that nothing was really going to change. So, it's very much so a lot of talk, but not necessarily a lot of substance. And you mentioned car manufacturing. Again, we export about 92,000 cars to the US every year, not very much. And what was negotiated... Yeah, but they're high-end cars, aren't they? They're expensive They are cars. High-end cars, but the negotiation was basically that it would be up to 100,000 cars. Yeah. So it's basically already what we export anyway. Right. So the impact is going to be very, very quite negligible. What we can have, though, is the opportunity to negotiate further. And Trump, I think, sounded actually quite positive when he was in the White House. The architects likes of Liberation Day, quote-unquote Liberation Day, wasn't very liberating when he implemented all those tariffs, weren't in the White House when he was announcing the US-UK trade deal. So I think that is a bit of a signal towards the fact that maybe things were a little bit incorrect, maybe they got things wrong on tariffs, and really this is about free trade. Now, why is free trade so important? It's because no individual person can create absolutely everything that they consume. No family or household can create everything they consume. You know, you can't create the clothes you wear and the food you eat and absolutely everything that you live in.
Not unless we go back to anarchy, which is what the Green Party would like us to do.
Oh, well, don't even get me started on the Green Party. We'll move on to that in a second. But the fact of the matter is no country can create everything they consume. And especially a country like the UK, we absolutely should never seek to do that. So we should be importing goods from across the world.
But what we should also do, surely, is to ensure that we should not have to be so reliant on goods from overseas that if we find ourselves unable to import those for whatever reason, whether it be a war or whether it be, you know, some kind of embargo of some kind, or, you know, some kind of human rights thing, that we can provide with our own, you know, at least a basic principle of our own homegrown items, like, for example, oil and gas in the North Sea. You know, why shut down oil and gas in the North Sea so that we can import the same oil and gas from Norway, which is literally right next door to the same field?
Oh, you're absolutely right on
no
oil
sense.
and gas. I disagree with you on, you know, the requirement of having domestic supply of certain goods. I mean, I don't think that's necessary unless we thought that we were going to go to war with absolutely every single country in the world, which I don't think is a realistic possibility.
No, but what I'm saying is that while there's a war on, you can't import stuff quite with such alacrity as you used to.
Energy is absolutely a really key part of this. The fact that we were so reliant on Russian oil and gas, I think, was proven to be not necessarily the best thing to do.
Right.
But that is part of the reason why I do think that having a domestic energy supply is absolutely important. But the government have actively restricted the supply of energy. We've cancelled North Sea oil and gas licences. We've got the
Which
spending.
is idiotic.
It is, absolutely. The spending review is coming up, and they're sort of all negotiating. One of those three departments that still haven't agreed it with Rachel Reeves is Ed Miliband and Net Zero. I mean, well, what could he possibly want more money for? My God, I mean, I would entirely abolish the department as a whole.
Of course.
There's absolutely no reason
GB
for
Energy.
it. And GB Energy.
And Jurgen.
And also the Department of Culture, Media and Sport. There's actually quite a few departments I'd completely... Afuera, like Javier Milei in Argentina did. There's no need for them. Why are we spending it? Get the chainsaw out.
Yeah, this is the thing. And of course, this is now what's going to be done in some of the local councils where Reform have gone in and said, right, we're going to bring a sort of Doge-style team in to look at some of the stuff. And they've already found some incredible things that have been wasted, like the bridge to nowhere up in Sheffield, and like down in Kent, where they know that they've spent vast amounts of money on projects which are really of no interest to the local people there at all.
Yeah, if you're a local person that's paying tax, you're paying your council tax every month, what you actually want is your bins to be collected on time, your potholes to be filled. I mean, it sounds so basic, but it really is exactly that, and that's what you're paying your council tax for.
Schools to be run reasonably well.
Schools to be run well, the roads to be cleared. But the problem is that the government require councils to spend huge amounts of money on things like adult social care. So I really am, quite happy with what Reform are trying to do with local councils. I think that trying to find savings where they can is absolutely important. They're calling it the local Doge. I think that's absolutely the right thing to do. However, I'm a little bit sceptical about the fact that they're going to make huge savings because the government legally require councils to spend X amount. I mean, I think Essex Council, about 80% of their spending is required by the national government. So really local councils don't have a lot of discretion over where that money is being spent. And when we've got an ageing population, a lot of that money is going on to things like adult social care.
Yeah, but it could well be that they're spending money in places where they don't need to spend it. Even though they might have to spend an amount of money. But I know, for example, from when I was working up in Scotland, Edinburgh City Council had a massive taxi bill because they were taking so many kids to school in taxis as part of the sort of, making sure they didn't play truant, and it was in the millions every single year. And surely that kind of thing has to be looked at. And you have to go, we can streamline it, we could make it a lot cheaper, we could do it in a different way. And I think that's what they'll do.
Absolutely. I mean, our friends over at the Taxpayers Alliance, they do some fantastic work on this. They do something called the Town Hall Rich List, where they look at staffing costs for a lot of those particular local councils. And I remember one year, I think it's about two or 3 years ago, Guildford Council was at the top of the list. There was a staff member that received £600,000 in remuneration in one single year. £600,000. So I actually think that a lot of the day-to-day spending doesn't necessarily need to be looked at because it's just impossible to change without without the national government changing their policy. But what absolutely can be looked at is staffing costs.
Yeah.
I know this anecdotally. I've heard of people that work in councils say, oh, I do about 2 hours of work a day and I've got 3 people under me, and they are, earning £60,000-70,000 a year. Absolutely, I think staffing costs need to be looked at. A lot of those particular people are basically being given pity jobs. They wouldn't get jobs in the private sector, so they're being given jobs in the public sector.
Absolute waste of time. Reem, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed.
Mike.
We've been talking about annoying things this morning. How about this from Eddie?
Hi, Mikey. Eddie from Preston. Great show. One thing that really annoys me is people walking in the middle of the aisle in the supermarket. And when you go to the left, they go to the left. When you go to the right, they go to the right. You're thinking, just get out of the way. You just want to pick them up and just throw them out of the way. And then when you go to the next aisle, you see a group of people having a matter right in front of your item. So you're walking around the supermarket constantly going, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me.
It's true, Eddie, great one. It's true, when there's somebody standing there just staring at the tea or something like that, they can't decide what to have, or get the cheese, you want to just get past them. How about when you're in a rush and someone has blocked your drive with a van, says Roger. Yeah, that is really irritating. It's 24 minutes past 9. We've got loads more coming. Robert Jenrick's coming up. We're going to talk about the state of Meghan Markle with Angela Levin, and also Sir Simon Mail, retired British Army General, talking about NATO and what's coming up.
We're 5 MPs, and guess what? We're polling in the lead, about 15% ahead of the Tories. So with the greatest of respect to Mr. Francois, he's become a minor party. That is the reality, and they are disappearing down a plug hole, and people are polling and voting for reform, and I think we'll do so in significant numbers in the future, because we've got common sense policies, and we just tell it as it is. So
I have never seen you so stroppy.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. Heidi Alexander's in Rochdale, says Keith in Durham. She just announced $15 billion to improve transport outside of London. Where on earth is this money coming from, as we are broke? Well, Rachel Reeves is about to speak in a moment, so we'll bring you that as and when it happens. 15 billion quid, though, for some buses and a couple of trams. You know, marvellous. But in only areas where Labour think that they can do well. Liam has got a voice note for us on annoying things.
Morning, Mike. Liam from Kent. Things that are annoying as driving for a living, you're going to love this one. Cyclists. They are the bane of my existence. At the end of the day, you're a grown man. Why are you dressing up like a thunder... Oh, I don't even know, I'm not going to say that. But dressing up like an idiot to ride a bike. And then they don't look, they don't care what motorists are up to. Oh, and especially in London. I do a bit of driving in London. It literally is the bane of my existence. Everywhere you go, there is a lefty on a push bike doing what they want. And it's always your fault. If they get involved in an accident or something, it's always the driver's fault. Anyway, Mike, have a great show.
Liam, enjoy the day, despite all those annoyances, particularly on two wheels. Very annoying. Sir Simon Mayles here, retired British Army General. Sir Simon, very good morning to you, sir.
Hi, Mike. Good morning to you.
Good to talk to you. It's all a bit confusing, this Strategic Defence Review business, isn't it? Because Starmer spent a great deal of time convincing us that 2.5% was a big deal, and then saying that his ambition was to get it to 3%. And then after sort of 48 hours of negotiations, it now turns out that NATO are going to impress upon him a 3.5% of GDP increase anyway. So, I mean, what's it all about, and what are they going to spend it on?
Well, I shouldn't be surprised that it's a bit of a muddle under a Labour government. Their heart is never really in defence. Certainly as a party, I think Starmer as Prime Minister is probably sincere about what he wants to do. The problem with the Defence Review, and there's some very good bits in it, George Robertson, Fiona Hill, my old friend Richard Barrons have done a very good job in setting out the problem. Is that, of course, it did require a commitment really to 3%. Even John Healey has said that. And Starmer, of course, there was a time they wasn't prepared to commit to that. And now NATO, particularly under pressure from Trump, have said, well, we think we need to aim for 3.5%. Well, they can't force anything on a British government, obviously, Mike, as we know over many years. Right. All the NATO countries have been underspending. But it sets a target against which 2.5% they acknowledge can't deliver what they want in the strategic defence review now underneath what NATO believes is required. So it's a difficult situation. Then you add to the fact that we're spending huge amounts on interest. We've got all sorts of payments going out on all sorts of things most of the British public don't want, and an economy that's not growing. So it's a real conundrum. So it's going to be it's been a good intellectual exercise. There's some good things will come out of it, I have no doubt, but I suspect it's going to be just consistent headlines of failures to deliver and deadlines missed, etc.
And what do you make of all this talk of putting us on a war footing? And, you know, a lot of people have said to me, particularly listeners and viewers to this show, have said, you know, if we were really on a war footing, surely we would be spending our money a bit more wisely. We wouldn't be announcing £15 billion worth of new buses and trams for Manchester and the West Midlands today, which they're doing. We wouldn't be spending loads of money on putting migrants up in hotels and not stopping them from coming here, and all of the things that really bother people on a day-to-day basis. If we were really on a war footing, if we were really under threat, this all wouldn't be happening, surely.
All absolutely right. I mean, this is where this great gap between rhetoric, some of it, I think, realistic. I think we should be absolutely focusing on defence and security, across all of Western Europe. The Ukraine war rolls on. Whichever way it ends, Russia's going to remain, certainly under Putin, a very dangerous enemy. But the rhetoric is simply, as you say, not really matched by the reality of spending priorities or a genuine move to a sort of a mindset of war footing. I think it's a little bit over too much to talk about war footing, but we certainly need a much more resilient society, a much more robust approach to defence. And we do need to keep reminding ourselves we do need to keep the Americans locked in. You know, this amount of money we're going to spend is still dependent on the fact that the Americans are providing the defence guarantees that have always supported NATO since the end of the Second World War. So let's not think this is a replacement for the Americans. This is just stepping up and doing our bit. which I have to say the previous government, to be totally even-handed, was just as bad in doing.
No, totally. They absolutely were. I get that.
One thing there, Mike, and I think you and I have discussed before, we gave all that equipment to the Ukrainians, no problem at all with that, but that should instantly have been backfilled. So a lot of this new money is going to actually just resupply the stockpiles. It should have been done actually right from the outset of our support to Ukraine.
Absolutely right. Good to talk to you, Simon Mel. Got to leave it there, I'm afraid. We've got short of time. Retired British Army General, making perfect sense there. Most annoying people are middle lane hoggers, says Steve. And Joanna from Salisbury says, Mike, what I find annoying, people that lie with a stupid expression on their faces, not understanding why everyone can see straight through them. An awful lot of it about at the moment in government. You can say that again. Here's Victoria.
Morning, Mike. Victoria here from Kent. The thing that annoys me more than anything is you are reversing halfway out a car parking space and then some bozo decides to drive around you or walk behind you when they can clearly see what you're doing. But nothing annoys me more than the Labour Party. I cannot stand them.
The Labour Party comes up an awful lot today for things that annoy people. How about this from Michelle in Altrincham, who says, what winds me up is drivers who don't indicate on the motorway. Just swing out like they're in a video game. No warning, no signal, just pure road arrogance. Too true. Angela Levin's coming next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:36. I'm Mike Graham. Morning, Mike. Surely that isn't a real government video, is it? Not even a film studies student would produce that on their first day as a project. It's just too unprofessional, says Ian in Somerset. Yeah, that's the one that sounds like it's been done by the bloke from the In-Betweeners, talking about, you know, we're making it work. It's all working. It's all working really well. Speaking of which, Rachel Reeves in Rochdale to announce that people in the North and the Midlands will benefit from a multi-million-pound boost for city transport. Just heard Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Manchester, who's dressed in a T-shirt and a sort of bomber jacket, basically saying that they want to have the first all-electric, carbon-free transport system, but not until the end of the decade. Just ridiculous. Rachel Reeves is speaking now. We're going to have a little listen to it, or can we come back to it?
The central barrier to economic growth has been underinvestment. For too long, Britain has lagged behind every other G7 economy when it comes to business investment as a share of GDP. One of the consequences was that the last Parliament was the worst on record for living standards. This government's economic strategy is designed to fix that problem, underpinned by the three pillars that I set out before the election. First, stability.
That'll do, yeah.
So that
very much.
investors...
We know about the economic strategy. It's not working. Let's try something else. She's wearing that same jumpsuit as she wore before. I know people could criticise her for that, but listen, let's talk to Angela Levin, royal commentator, of course, who's waiting patiently to talk about Meghan Markle, because she's in the Sun today, pausing her jam firm in case it gets annoying. Apparently, some kind of reality has set in. Angela, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
She thinks she might be annoying.
She thinks people might be annoying if they can't get their jam one after the other. If they've got to wait, it's going to be terrible. So she wipes them out. This is what she was talking about to Tina Knowles, the mother of Beyonce. It was her last podcast. Last week was her last podcast, but this week she decided to want to do another one. So it's the last one, but plus one.
Okay.
And Tina gave her a real whopping, really. She kept telling her, well, it's not a good idea to let things run out. And what are you doing? Get on with it, girl. But Meghan then said, we don't know how many tears she's cried while she's got all this ready. It's been so difficult because she's done so much work. So it's a very extraordinary way of behaving and not doing anything for 6 months. Because she doesn't want to upset people.
Right.
And if they do want it, they want it now, don't they? They don't want to hang on.
Well, I don't know that there's that big of a demand. Could you not perhaps see this in a slightly different way, that maybe she's not producing any more jam because nobody wants it?
Well, I didn't believe it that they went out in 45 minutes of everything they wanted. I thought that nobody was buying it, actually, but you've got to cover it. You've got to make sure that people don't really believe this. So that's it. But what she did say was Lilibet, who's actually 4 today. There's a picture of her with her mother's hair all over her, so we can't really see what she's like. No sign of Harry. And she said what would be lovely if she worked with her daughter all the time. That would be so sweet. But it was a hideous discussion, and she was trying to get the best out of it about herself, that she was so clever and she was doing it right because she wanted people to be so happy. But they're not going to be happy if they can't get it, and if they don't want it, what's the point of her doing it?
It's also vacuous, though, isn't it? It's just sort of awfully vacuous.
It's completely vacuous, and she thinks next time she might not do food, she might do cutlery or something like that. And you think, okay. But meanwhile, the people who've paid for food and haven't got it are actually very angry. So how are you working? How are you getting on? I mean, it's she's very, very tired and she's exhausted because she's had to do so much. But she's obviously had a lot of help, but she needs, you see the thing on her head. She needs help. But yesterday, out came this long podcast about her, and she got a good telling of. And then later that afternoon, out came a message that anyone who wants strawberries or raspberry jam, please get in touch and we'll give it to you. So although she's not doing it for 6 months, the next day she is doing it. Please ring a number and we'll try and help you.
Well, it's not that hard to deal with a couple of requests. It's a couple of thousand you can't deal with, but I don't think there's that many. So they can probably just do it on the basis of just send us an email and we'll send you a jar.
Yes.
That seems to be how it's going.
I think so. It's been a disaster, actually, but she keeps calling herself a businesswoman, and she hasn't, because it's all fallen down. And she's there on her own trying to do it, she pretends, but she's got loads of people. One of the cooking days, she had 80 people to help her in her house she was renting. So, you can't believe a word she said, I'm afraid.
No, it's all very disappointing, isn't it? Angela, thank you so much. We haven't got much time this morning, but very good to see you, and thank you for those kind words. Royal commentator Angela Levin. Now, let's get a voice note from Hannah on Labour.
Mike, it's just dreadful. When you compare that video of Caroline Leavitt and her utter wonderful smackdown of the BBC and her sheer competency in everything she says and does, and you compare that with that awful, wet, mediocre, awful video of the Labour guy going on about what nonsense they're doing to stop the boats and all the rest of it. It's just, I just despair, to be honest. We're just weak. We are weak and pathetic, and I just can't bear what we've become.
I know, absolutely right. Save us, Mike, says Kevin in Tamworth. That video Labour released on the migrant boats, a school kid who did the voiceover, have his parents given permission for his voice to be used? Surely that's not a good use of work experience time. Let's have another look at it.
Want to know how we're controlling our borders? Then watch this. We're working with our international allies to smash people smuggling gangs for good. We're giving law enforcement new powers to criminalise those who endanger their lives at sea, and making sure every business carries out right-to-work checks, ending the exploitation of illegal labour. Our plan is working. Since July, we have returned nearly 30,000 people with no right to be here. Hundreds of boats and engines have been seized, and illegal working rates are up by 40%.
Can I have that soy latte that I asked for, please? Let's get another voice note from Mike.
Morning, Mike. Mike from Bratley here. Great show as always. Just on the subject of that stupid video that Labour have released about the boats. At least it's not soft porn music, but it does sound like a strangulated version of the Macarena. Anyway, keep up the good work. Cheers, buddy. Bye for now.
Absolutely unbelievable. Completely and utterly hopeless. This is, of course, the home of common sense. 9:44. Robert Jenrick, I think, is right here. We can go to him right now. He is, of course, the Shadow Justice Secretary. Robert, very good morning to you.
Good morning. How are you?
Yeah, very well indeed. Just enjoying some of the Labour propaganda that seems to be being put out there. Almost sort of 3 videos a day we're getting now from them, telling us that they're doing things that they're not doing, telling us that they've done things that they haven't done, telling us that they've accomplished things that they haven't accomplished. It's quite an extraordinary thing to see a government telling so many lies. And I mean, Chris Philp said it this week, that Keir Starmer actually is being incredibly dishonest with the public.
No, I think Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves are amongst the most dishonest politicians we've had in our recent history. They just told lie after lie after lie. They said they weren't going to raise taxes. They did. They said they weren't going to take away the winter fuel allowance. They did. They said they were going to smash the boats, the gangs, and the gangs are smashing them. You're seeing absolutely astonishing numbers of people breaking into our country every day. Now they're saying it's all the weather. It's complete nonsense. They've lost control of our borders, as the Defence Secretary at least had the honesty to say on the Sunday media shows himself.
Absolutely right. I mean, you've been very much in the news yourself, Robert, over the past week or so. The incredible response to your visit to the London Underground, where you went to Stratford Station and encountered 1 or 2 miscreants who weren't paying their fares fairly. Were you surprised at the way that some members of the media, and I'm talking about Good Morning Britain in particular, reacted to that?
Yeah, of course, it had to be my fault, wasn't it, that I was out there trying to raise the alarm about what was going on, the fact that Sadiq Khan was doing nothing, and it's the fault of the person who's actually raising the issue, not the people who are dodging their fares, not the people who are, rude or obnoxious, or even the bloke who threatened me with a knife. It's all me. So it did say something about a small section of the left-wing media that they won't call out law breaking, they don't call out, criminality. They want to find excuses for this. But the fact that the video was viewed 15 million times suggests that most people in our country disagree with them, and in fact are sick to their teeth about this kind of low-level criminality that people in Westminster want to cover up or don't want to take seriously. I think at the moment there is a real problem, whether it's graffiti, it's obnoxious music on the tube, it's having your mobile phone nicked, it's shoplifting. There's a sense of these things are being almost decriminalised in our country right now, and they want someone to step up, reassert the law and the state and get a grip.
Well, they do. And when people say, why is he picking on Turkish barbershops? I mean, it's almost as though they don't live in the same real world that we all live in. We all see Turkish barbershops growing and growing in this country. We see them flowering on the high street, if you like, in towns all over the country. They're like the new county lines situations, aren't they? And for people to make out that that is in some way, a dog whistle, as I think one person said, relatively recently, is crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, completely. Look, I don't know what planet these people live on, but it's not the high streets that I walk down where you're seeing Turkish-style barber after barber open up. There's obviously not demand for all these barbers. I read in the papers that there's a small town in Wales, 6,000 population. It's now got its 14th barber.
Yeah.
Obviously something is going wrong. There's something fishy about at least some of those barber shops. Not all of them, obviously, but some of them. And the National Crime Agency itself has published research that shows that some of them are linked to money laundering, illegal migration, organised crime.
Yeah.
And so we absolutely have to take action against some of these. And there are other things as well, these American-style candy shops that are opening up on the high street, not making their money out of selling Haribo, but out of money laundering, and someone's got to do something about it. And the fact that parts of the media, James O'Brien or Ed Balls, want to pretend that this isn't happening or say that it's dog whistle politics to even talk about it, I think shows just how unbelievably out of touch they are.
Oh, I know. And they were always insisting that using the word Turkish was somehow a racist thing to do. It's what they called themselves. They're called Turkish barbers. It's not, it says it on the tin. It's not like you've made that up. This week, though, you were taking aim at a slightly different target, Lord Hermer. The Attorney General of this country, who seems to be a man with more lives than a cat, because I would have thought he should have been out of a job towards the back end of last year when it became clear that he had got some conflicts of interest at the very least when it came to the sale of the Chagos Islands and the contract around all of that, plus some of the people that he's represented over time.
This is a man who built his career representing people who hate our country. People like Jerry Adams, Shamima Begum, individuals who are alleged to be lieutenants of Osama bin Laden, individuals who are linked to 9/11 and 21/7. And then he is hand-picked by Keir Starmer to be the Attorney General of our country. So he goes from day after day representing people who wanted to do our country harm to being the guy who's providing legal advice to the government to defend our country. It's a completely ludicrous situation, and he shouldn't be in this job. But it actually says more about Keir Starmer, that he chose this man to sit around the cabinet table of the United Kingdom to be our chief legal officer. And I think it says that Keir Starmer prizes his reputation amongst international lawyers and the kind of North London dinner party set above the core interests and security of the British people. And you've seen that in some of the decisions that together they've taken, handing over the Chagos Islands to an ally of China and spending billions of pounds on it, stripping veterans who served during the period of the Troubles of the immunity that they'd been given by Parliament, so that now some of them may spend their 70s and 80s once again facing vexatious legal suits in our courts, and saying that he's not going to appeal a judgment that happened in the Northern Ireland High Court that now looks like it's going to mean hundreds of millions of pounds of taxpayers' money is going to be spent paying out compensation to IRA terrorists and sympathisers, people connected with the IRA such as Jerry Adams. I think that's an absolute disgrace. And that all goes back to the kind of man that Keir Starmer is. Look, he is just not fit, I think, to be Prime Minister. He's not someone who is able to tackle the challenges that our country faces right now.
And what do you think he's going to have to do, though, to lose that job as Attorney General? Because it seems remarkable that he's been able to sail as close to the wind as he has. I mean, we didn't mention there the fact that he said anyone who thinks that they want to leave the ECHR is basically akin to a Nazi, which he had to apologise for and say, I used clumsy words. Well, these are not people who use clumsy words. He's a trained barrister. He knows exactly what he's saying, doesn't he?
Yeah, of course he did. Yeah, he compared critics of the ECHR to the Nazis. I mean, that's an absurd, ridiculous suggestion, but also highly offensive. And he's not going to help us to tackle the challenges we're facing as a country. 9 countries signed a letter recently to the Council of Europe demanding reform of the ECHR, including Denmark and Austria and Italy. Where was the UK? Nowhere to be seen. He is not serious, neither is Keir Starmer, about tackling our borders. He wants to stick to a broken system which is leading us wide open to illegal migration. He's not suited to the job, but the real person we should be focusing our ire on is Keir Starmer. He appointed this man. They're old friends. He knew exactly the kind of person that Lord Hermer was. And it shows once again that that Keir Starmer does not put the interests of the British public first, and he's not somebody who's going to tackle the challenge, whether it's illegal migration, whether it's the fact that people's living standards now are just so low and we need to get wages up, whether it's the fact that NHS waiting lists aren't falling in the way that they should be, whether it's the housing crisis, you name it, the big challenges facing our country, Keir Starmer is either tinkering around the edges when people want serious radical policies to improve the situation, or even making things worse, as is the case what you see now with the small boats crisis.
And that is the proper crisis, I think, rather than the war footing that I think he wants to put us on. I've got a quick voice note to play. This is from Paul, who's been watching.
Hi, Mike. It's Paul from Newcastle. Great show, as usual. A quick one on Labour's video. I mean, they're just a joke, aren't they? But what they should do is they should get Robert Jenrick to help out with the videos. That guy knows how to make a good video. Cheers, mate. Great show. Keep it up.
There you go. So if all else fails, you'll have a career in video production. But technically, Robert, you are, I ask you this every time we have you on. I mean, you are making all the headway for the Tories right now. I mean, they're not in a great place in the polls, but everybody says to me the only person that really is cutting through right now from the Tory party in any way, shape or form is Robert Jenrick. I'm going to ask you again, do you think you'll be leader of the party by the end of the summer?
No, look, we've got a leader in Kemi Bay. No, I'm right behind her. Shadow Justice, etc. I'm just trying to get stuck in and do my job. But look, I do think that you've got to get stuck in. I'm here in a suit outside Parliament today, and there's a place for that. But you've also got to get out there in the country, listen to people, and shame the authorities into actually doing something for once. And that's what some of these videos have been doing, trying to show issues that we all face in our working lives, whether it's fare dodging, whether it's tradesmen having their vans broken into and their tools nicked, whether it's their litter in Birmingham, and actually getting people to step up and do something. Because I think there's a massive yearning in the country right now for people who are doers, who are going to try and turn this country around. Because we are a strong country. Yes, the challenges are really big, but we are a country that is capable of reversing the damage that's happening, and I want to see that happen, because I don't want this country to go down. I want us to be the great country that we are and deserve to be in the future.
Robert Jenrick, thank you very much indeed. Shadow Justice Secretary there, talking to us here on Morning Glory. We're nearly at the end of the show. We'll be back after this.
Well, the first 5 years of that so-called Conservative government was a coalition government, which had to deal with the massive legacy of the debt left behind by Labour and the fact that the MOD was overspent by between 39 and 55 billion over the decade. So that had to be dealt with of gross economic and departmental mismanagement. And then, of course, we had the period of the pandemic, which again was extraordinarily difficult.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 9:58 and we are nearly finished for the day. Julie Hartley-Brewer is here.
Hello.
Very good morning to you. Rachel Reeves is still banging on about buses.
I just love the people who have to stand behind her. And
There's
Keir
no
Starmer
women
this
there.
week.
How's
There's a bunch
there
of
no
blokes.
women?
One guy definitely is there for a bet.
Yeah.
There's a bloke in blue who's definitely there for
Yeah.
a bet. I'm just waiting for him to do something. He's going to like sort of pull down his trousers or something like that.
Yeah, or just wink at the wrong time. But it's just awful, isn't
Grim,
it? She's
isn't it?
obviously reading from a telly